I call the April 30th, 2024 City Commission meeting to order. City staff, please call the roll.
Mayor Butler,
Here.
Commissioner Adamchak,
Here.
Commissioner McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt,
Attending.
Commissioner Ramada.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Okay, now the meeting tonight's a work session, and it's an opportunity for the City Commission to discuss items in greater detail amongst themselves and interact with the staff, consultants, and other invited presenters. No formal action may be taken by the City Commission at a work session, but general direction may be given. Public comments not permitted unless a majority of the City Commission takes a procedural vote to allow it on a particular item. So at this point, Commissioners, do you want to allow public comment?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll need a motion to do that.
I move that we permit public comment this evening.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Adamchak,
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramada.
Yes.
Mayor Butler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, for public comments, when we get around to that part, each person will be limited to one speaking opportunity for up to 5 minutes per item and should address all comments to the commission. And be sure you sign in and state your name and address when you come forward. So, the main item on the agenda tonight for the work session is Move Manhattan Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan Update. And Aaron, you can take it from there.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm going to start with just a little bit of background of like how we got here and kind of what this means tonight, because as you can see from the audience, there's a lot of information out there. And so right now where we are in this planning effort is, I would say, kind of halfway through. This is your opportunity to give feedback directly to the consultant and to staff about where we are at in the plan. We will further develop this, and the intent is to bring a final version of that plan to the first June meeting. So what I would encourage you to do tonight is think about what the future of Manhattan looks like, specifically through Parks and Recreation, and really think about where we want to make our investments. When we started this process, general master plans last about 10 years. You go through periodic updates annually. You heard me say before, my intent is to do a statistically valid survey every 2 years to make sure we're getting the proper public input. Well, as we've developed this plan, it's actually turning more to a 20-year plan. Part of that is just the size and the amount, and we haven't done one of these since 1992. So this is fully comprehensive. Now we're going to cover several items tonight. You feel free to stop the consultants and ask questions. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But we really want to think about what's the next 20 years of investments look like. And so that's really where I would task you tonight, is try to give that kind of feedback. In May, we'll bring some funding options for you, so we're not going to dive too deep into that. We are going to talk a little bit about kind of what potential costs may be and what that looks like from a cost recovery standpoint. As you remember, when we started, we were looking at aquatics only versus aquatics and rec center and part of this plan. And so we've got some of that data for you tonight, so just to illustrate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve with Vireo, and he can take you from there.
Aaron, may I ask a question first?
Sure.
So the document that I read today, the survey report and or your PowerPoint, or the consultant's PowerPoint, didn't have as much content as I expected about maintenance of the park system in general.
Okay, because again, that hasn't been fully developed right now. This planning document, when you get it, will be 300 pages probably, maybe a few more, especially if you count the appendix. So they're currently putting those sections together. Part of this feedback goes into that final plan. The kind of maintenance and ongoing operations is a section in there, including staffing levels. So that's to come in the future. This is kind of the concept development that we've gone with, that many people have seen, and we'll lean into that tonight and talk about those kind of things. Again, a little bit of costing, but it's pretty high level at this point. There'll be some financial analysis in the plan as well, and that will come through that full document. Okay?
Yep,
Sure.
thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Steve Rhodes. I am a landscape architect with Vireo. With me tonight on our consulting team is Larry Reynolds with Vireo, Pat O'Toole with Barry Dunn, Brian Garvey with SFS Architecture, Tracy Anderson with Anderson Knight Architects, Kyle McCauley with Water's Edge, and Jason Murata with ETC Institute.
Hey, Steve, real quick, can you stand either in front of one or the other, not in the middle? Thanks.
Okay. So for tonight's agenda, we are going to sort of give you an overview of where we're at in the master planning phase. The Move Manhattan, Kansas plan is a vision moving forward over the next 20 years. It looks at the system holistically, both parks and recreation, over that 20-year time frame. It looks at operations, staffing, financial aspects of the department, recreational programs, and capital improvement opportunities. As Aaron said, the department plans to review and update on an annual basis and provide public survey every 2 years to understand the desires of the public and to maintain the relevance. Our specific scope over the 20-year plan is listed above, and we'll get into aspects of this as we go through the plan. I'd now like to turn it over to Larry Reynolds to talk a little bit more about the park inventory.
Thank you, Steve. So I'm going to touch base on a few things that'll be in the system comprehensive plan, and then we're going to get into some more detailed pieces of that plan. So as Aaron mentioned, you don't have the full plan yet, but we wanted to touch base on a few pieces of that. So included in the plan will be cut sheets similar to what you see above for each park. We've done an assessment. We've been out in the park. We've looked at the condition of the amenities. We've looked at the park holistically in terms of accessibility, character, connectivity, all of those sorts of things. So that'll be a part of this. It'll identify key issues that we saw in the parks, that we heard from steering committee, that we heard from the public. Those pieces will be a part of each park as well. We also, at the beginning of this study, went back and looked at all of the plans that have been done in the past, stemming back all the way to 1992, which was the first comprehensive system-wide Parks and Rec master plan. Through the years, there's been a number of studies, and we specifically wanted to look at how often indoor aquatics has been mentioned, because we knew coming into this that was a topic of conversation that was going to be a part of this plan. So as you can see, since 1992, there's about 12 different studies that have been done, and in all of those almost, there's been some form of community survey that's influenced that plan, where the community has said, we would like to see an indoor aquatic facility. In 2015, there was a statistically valid survey done as well. So 10 of those mentioned aquatics facilities, 8 of those studies mentioned indoor recreation facilities, and 4 mentioned bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Since then, you can see that indoor recreation facility, there's been a number of things that have actually been completed. In 2021, they completed the Anthony Rec Center, the Eisenhower Rec Center, and the Douglas Center. 2023, the Seco Park improvements are underway. In 2020, started implementing a 20-year bike and pedestrian systems plan. However, there's been no construction or installation of any type of indoor aquatic facilities. So part of this plan was a robust public engagement task. And we reached out to the public in a number of different ways. We had focused groups, we had in-person meetings, we had public open houses, we had a social pinpoint, which is an online website where folks could come leave comment about the park system in a number of different ways. They could also take a survey, leave comment. We also had the statistically valid survey that went out, and we'll talk a little bit about that next. But overall, we've had input and interactions from just under 2,000 people. I'm going to ask Jason Murata with ETC Institute to come up and talk a little bit about who they are. They're the ones who facilitated the statistically valid survey.
Thanks, Larry. My name is Jason Murata with the ETC Institute. We're a marketing and research firm that specializes in conducting statistically valid surveys for local governments. We are based in Olathe, Kansas, but we're a national leader in providing market research for local governments. We've been doing this type of work for over 40 years, and in the last 10 years alone, we've conducted surveys in more than 1,000 communities across the country. So this is really the type of work that we specialize in. We conduct surveys on a number of different topics, but one of the topics we focus on the most are parks and recreation needs assessment surveys. And we also conducted that statistically valid survey in 2015 that Larry mentioned. So just a little background about this survey. The survey was 7 pages in length. That's the printed version of the survey. And that's a pretty typical length for one of these statistically valid needs assessment surveys. They're usually 6 to 7 pages, so this was a little towards the long end, but within the normal range. The survey was administered by a combination of mail and online to randomly selected households throughout the city. And that mail-online combination is our standard methodology for these types of surveys. We like that hybrid approach because the mailed survey typically skews a little more towards older residents, and then the online survey more towards younger residents. So they're a good complement to each other. Our goal is to receive at least 400 completed surveys, and a sample of 400 surveys is a typical sample size for a city the size of Manhattan. Really for cities up to about 70 to 80,000 residents, the most common sample size is 400 surveys. We had a good response to the survey. We ended up with 438 completed surveys, and the results of the 438 surveys at the 95% level of confidence has a margin of error of plus or minus 4.6%. Essentially, that means that if we conducted this survey the same way 100 times, 95 times the results would be plus or minus 4.6 from what we're reporting. So even for a statistically valid survey, the results are never perfect, but the margin of error is small. And as we're administering the survey, we monitor the demographics of survey respondents to make sure we had a good representation from key demographic groups. So here we have a map of the city. The red dots are households that completed a survey. We had a good distribution throughout the city. The areas without the red dots are generally non-residential areas, and then the areas that have the most red dots are among the densest areas of the city. And then when it comes to the actual survey questions, we worked with the consulting team as well as Parks and Recreation staff to develop the survey questions. We conduct these types of surveys all over the country, so we have standard types of questions that we ask nationwide. But then for each project, we work with the consulting team and then the Parks and Rec staff to customize and tailor the questions to fit the needs for each particular project. So some of the things that the survey identifies are usage and satisfaction with recreation and programming, the needs and unmet needs for the community, some of the barriers that prevent households from participating in programs more often, support for potential improvements, and then what we call the priority investment rating, which you'll see that in more detail in a little bit. But essentially that determines which types of improvements we feel should be the highest priority to focus on. And that's based on those amenities and facilities that have a combination of the highest levels of unmet need, but at the same time are also the most important to the community. So with that, I'll pass it back to Larry.
Thank you, Jason. So I wanted to kind of cover the demographics of those who took the survey and let you know who those people were. Like you said, they're a representative of the demographic profile of your community. Respondents, years resided in Manhattan, 31% have lived here over 31 years. The majority, almost 65%, are full-time employees within Manhattan. And you can see the income breakdown of those who took the survey to the right. You can see the age breakdown. 19% were in 18 to 34 years old, 21% 35 to 44, 19% were 45 to 54, 21% of respondents were 55 to 64, and 20% were 65 and older. The race breakdown, 78% white, 7.3% Hispanic, 4.8% black, and just under 5% were Asian, and then just under 1% for American Indian and other. 49% male, 50% female, 1% non-binary. So now I want to kind of touch base on the different means of public engagement that we did and the patterns we saw across the different engagements. So the top 3 responses that we saw for overall satisfaction of the Parks and Rec system, from in-person conversations to online input to the statistically valid survey, safety and security, the system as a whole, park maintenance, we saw those across 2 to 3 of those different platforms. The bottom 3, we heard marketing and communication across all of those different types of engagement were the #1 opportunity for improvement. The variety of programs as well was second. In terms of overall system-wide priorities, here we see aging amenities, quality improvements, and planning and expanding trails were common threads throughout all of the different engagements that we did. So this is a list of all those different priorities from the statistically valid survey. So from that, we see that when you combine strongly agree and agree, the top 3 most important things to the community system-wide are updating aging amenities in parks, quality improvements and future needs planning for growth, and continuing to expand the trail network. Indoor aquatics only facility was important for those who said strongly agree. Overall, the community said that high-quality parks are important to them, 75%. Another 20 said it's at least somewhat important to provide high-quality parks. The priority investment rating is a proprietary tool that ETC has developed to provide you with a tool for decision-making to determine what's going to provide the greatest good to the greatest number of people in the community in terms of investment in Parks and Rec. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to PIR.
I can just give a real brief
Sure.
description of how we come up with this. So this is based on 2 different types of data. We have a question on the survey where we give residents a list of, oftentimes it's 25 to 30 different types of amenities or programs. We ask them how well their needs are being met for each one of these. And then that tells us which types of amenities and programs have the highest level of unmet need. And then as a follow-up question, we ask which of those amenities or programs are the most important to your household. So the idea behind this is that the items that have a combination of high levels of unmet need, but at the same time are the most important, should be the highest priorities to focus on. Now, this doesn't mean that the areas in green or blue, which are lower or medium priorities, don't need any attention. But making improvements to the areas in red will impact the greatest number of households.
So for outdoor park amenities, the top 5 were nature, hiking and biking trails, natural areas for passive recreation and wildlife benefit, restrooms, paved trails, and the outdoor pool. In terms of outdoor park amenities, again, across the different engagements that we did, we heard pickleball courts, sports fields, trails, both paved and natural. The bottom three are the least most important. We heard were basketball and volleyball courts, sports courts. I'm going to ask Steve to come back and talk a little bit about proposed park concept plans.
So as a part of the Parks and Recreation System strategic plan, we were asked to develop 3 concept master plans for 3 parks. And so we have developed those for Northview Park, Northeast Community Park, and City Park. I'll hit the highlights of each one, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail about City Park. The Northview Park plan, the master plan vision includes added parking to the north side of the park, pickleball courts, a basketball court, a fitness area, a new playground with shelters and a restroom. It retains the existing pool, and there's a loop trail that connects all of that together and provides a connection to the community trail system. Northeast Community Park, we really looked at locating some of the uses currently at City Park over to Northeast Community Park and developing it into more of recreational fields. There are 3 small soccer fields, 3 full-size soccer fields, a central lawn area with shelters and a playground. There's 4 baseball, softball fields, 2 t-ball, a loop trail, expanded parking, and then a prairie pavilion within the prairie to serve as a potential event space or possible day camp sort of space. The City Park plan is really a fresh vision to help activate the park. The passive green space on the west is retained. A diagonal promenade or walkway goes from the northwest to the southeast corner. There's a redeveloped family park area is maintained on the southeast corner over the 20 years as that park expands and that family park area needs improvements. That's where it would occur. There's court spaces, pickleball, basketball, where the current outdoor pool would be. Again, this is a 20-year plan, and as those spaces sort of evolve, that space would turn into outdoor court space. There's added sand volleyball, a central plaza in the middle. The plan calls for outdoor expansion of the theater space with an event lawn, the recreation aquatic facility located at the end of North Manhattan Avenue, parking for that facility, and then a skate park on the northeast corner. Much of this plan sort of removes the vehicular circulation through the park, and there's entries off of Points and Fremont. We sort of looked at the recreational programs that the department is offering in terms of who's participated and then who doesn't participate, the performance rating of those existing recreational program, and the barriers to those recreational program uses over the last 2 years. Again, the priority investment ratings of those recreational programs, the high priorities were adult fitness and wellness programs, adult water aerobics and fitness, adult lap swimming, community special events, adult nature programs, outdoor water recreation, and cultural enrichment programs. Again, priority investment ratings for some sort of new facility, indoor leisure, family-oriented pool, indoor competition pool, walking and jogging track, weights and cardio fitness area. So we're responding to the results of the statistically valid survey in these master plan concepts. We then looked at sort of the aquatic facilities. Those that took the survey responded to a question about facility usage. 31% used the city park water park. 29% of the community do not use the pools at all. 20% uses Seco Park. 7% use the city park splash pad. 6% of the respondents use Northview Water Park, and then 6% use Blue Earth Plaza splash pad. And then again, the barriers to use of those aquatic facilities. So at this point, I'd like to ask Tracy Anderson to join me up here to really look at not only what we're showing in this plan, but also look back to what the community said related to some of these ideas and issues in the past. Do you want to take it?
Sure. So going back to just as far back as the 2015 Strategic Facility Improvement Plan, we identified, again, ETC did a statistically valid survey for that, and I forget the exact number of priorities that were developed. It was quite an extensive list, but the top 4 were indoor rec, playability and safety of fields, connectivity, trails, sidewalks, those types of things, and indoor aquatics. Right on the heels of that study came what was called the Facility Feasibility Study that took those 4 priorities, studied them a little more in depth to see what could be done, what needed to be done. And that ultimately led to our 2017 quality of life sales tax that was passed and ultimately built the rec centers at the middle schools, is what's going to help pay for the Seco Park improvements and has helped additionally funding additional trails and connectivity within the city. During that study, aquatics was pulled out of it as saying it needed further study. So, yeah, so
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, so in 2021, we came to the commission and proposed doing a indoor aquatic facility feasibility study. The commission granted that request, and we went through that process to develop a feasibility study for that. And if you'll recall, some of you weren't on the commission at the time, but you had 120 people sign up to be on that steering committee. That's more people than you've ever had sign up to be on a steering committee by a factor of probably 5, I'm going to guess. So to say the need isn't there, I think that would very strongly say the need was a desire there. When we went onto that study, one of the things we pointed back to was in 2015 and 2017, what has changed? Well, pre-COVID, the natatorium was open. When COVID hit, K-State shut the natatorium down. That was the closest thing we had to indoor community water in this town, if you were some way, shape, or form associated with K-State. We've already addressed the other 3 priorities, so this, again, was the 4th priority that was being put under analysis. So as we went through that, several options came out of that process, and they were presented to the commission at the time. Basically, I just sort of call them small, medium, and large. And the difference really in all of the concepts is the competitive water. Do you do a small pool? Do you do a medium-sized pool, or do you do a large pool? The leisure component in that study was always shown exactly the same way, because leisure pool has an infinite number of solutions to it. And we knew that if that were to move forward, there would be yet another steering committee created that would help basically design the leisure component. There'd be a bucket of money associated with that component, just like on the rec centers, that the community or that committee got to help identify what are the features we want in leisure. So for the essence of the study, we just looked at that basically as a bucket of money throughout that entire study. At the end of that study, when we submitted it in 2022, you can see the price cost up there above each pool diagram in blue, ranging anywhere from 18.2 to 33.1. We went back about a week ago and asked McCown Gordon to update those numbers for 2024. And you see those numbers at the bottom. So 18.2 is now 22.6 today, all the way up from 33.1 to 37.7 for the large one today. If you forecast that out, assuming the same escalation per year, you can see what if we wait to start construction 4 years from now, those numbers jump up significantly even more. So we just wanted to give you a baseline from what happens from 2022 to today to even looking 4 years down the road as far as those numbers go.
Thanks, Tracy. So specifically for our statistically valid survey, what did the community tell us in the survey in terms of their desires for specific indoor, or specifically aquatics? 73% supported an outdoor pool, 72% supported an indoor recreation center, 70% supported an indoor pool, and then 44% supported outdoor splash pads. So again, looking at the priority investment ratings of, what's the high priority for any aquatic amenities in town. Again, open recreational swimming area, warm water swimming area, competitive lap lanes, deep water, lazy river, inclusive features and amenities, active water features, shallow water, sauna, and zero depth or a beach type entry. So again, we're folding all of this into the crafting of this 20-year vision to make sure what we heard from this survey is included moving forward for further conceptual development and community conversation. So we asked specific questions related to which option best fits you or your household. 55% responded aquatics facility only. 19% said recreation center. 13% said don't know. And 13% said neither option. Yes.
In this question, was it clear that the recreation center would also include some type of aquatics? Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure people weren't picking either swimming or basketball or something like that.
It's coming.
Okay.
Yeah. So, indoor aquatics only, indoor aquatics rec center, how would you vote? And so, indoor aquatics only was supported by 64%. 25% of the community said they would vote against, and 11% said they're not sure. And that's basically because they don't have a proposal in front of them to decide yes or no on. Indoor aquatics and rec center, 58% would support that, might vote in favor. 30% would vote against, and again, 13% not sure. Support a sales tax for a facility, 50% supportive to very supportive, 19% not sure, 13% not supportive, and 18% not supportive at all. Indoor aquatics and rec center, again, 48 supportive or very supportive, 23% not sure, 16% not supportive, and 17% not supportive at all. So moving more towards City Park as the location for the recreation aquatic concept in the 20-year vision. We've heard a number of questions related to community open space. So we're going to sort of dive in to exactly why City Park makes sense from our perspective. We've pulled actually some of the previous studies that have been done. We've pulled their analysis forward as well, and we'll show you those. Related to green space, maintaining green space in City Park. So we figured up the total green space of the park area is about 46.5 acres. Of that 46, the existing is about 29.25 is dedicated green space. The program space, meaning parking lot, tennis court, baseball field, existing pool, that basically comes up to about 17.25 acres. So in this proposed plan, our green space actually increases by 1 acre. And essentially that is consolidating all of those parking lots and all of those court areas to one section of the park, more on that north side, eliminating roadways through the park and providing access from the north and south. North Manhattan Avenue, terminating this view on some sort of architectural element in the park, we think would be a significant move forward for the city and the department in terms of giving an identity and a place for such a facility. We looked at several different reasons of why the rec center indoor aquatic space makes sense at City Park. It is central to the city. It is a regional draw into the downtown core, both downtown and Aggieville. It's accessible to at-risk populations. It's within walking distance of the primary labor force and KSU. And there are several parking structures within a few blocks of this location. So in 2006, Manhattan did a recreation study, and in this study, they looked at a potential location for such a facility: Seco Park, City Park, downtown redevelopment, or Griffith Park. And again, City Park, they went through all of these different criteria, and they came back at City Park was the right location, being central to the community. We did our own analysis of a 1-mile radius of City Park, Seco Park, and Northview Park, just to compare some demographics. These demographics are from Esri, community analyst. We looked at total population, college student population, daytime population, under 18, 18 to 64, 65 plus, total households, households below the poverty level, and households with a disability. And again, in our eyes, City Park is the right place for this facility, being centrally located to the city. So people talk about City Park being used. So we actually, through the city, used Placer AI, which is a sort of a cell phone tracking program that tracks cellular devices throughout spaces. And you can see in the year 2023, this is over an entire year, the red, orange, and yellow areas are sort of highly visited. The lighter blue areas are sort of frequently visited, and the areas with no shading at all are hardly ever visited. So again, it's a portion of this plan is to sort of activate and renew City Park with new uses to really encourage people to use it other than how they're doing today. Again, I mentioned the location of those parking structures. One of them is existing with dedicated public parking. The two other orange shaded areas to the northeast are proposed parking structures which would have dedicated public parking. We like this proximity to this new facility because we could lower our parking lot needs, knowing that we have overflow space in these structures a few blocks away from this new proposed center. So we developed some renderings to give people an idea of what this 20-year vision could be. This is looking northwest from City Hall, and then it's sort of a ground shot. We envisioned that the sort of the corner here on the southeast would be for some sort of detention facility of the whole park, and then that promenade would turn into a large boardwalk over that space. And then as you moved north, you would pass through the court spaces on your left, the family amenity area on the right, arrive at sort of that central plaza with the theater on your right, and then eventually to this new center space, and then eventually up to the northwest. This is, again, a view looking back to the southeast of the potential rec center. Here's a view of that corner of 14th and Fremont, of how that could look. Again, looking to the southeast. And now I'm going to hand it over to Brian Garvey with SFS Architecture to talk more specifically about the 20-year vision for this aquatics recreation center.
Hey, real quick, are these renderings to scale, like for the entire park?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Brian Garvey. I'm with SFS Architecture. We're out of Kansas City. We work regionally across Missouri and Kansas and other states in public sector world of architecture and planning, a lot of which is recreation center and aquatic center design. I'm going to have Kyle come up here shortly, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the recreation center and aquatic center concept. So again, this is a high-level concept plan. It's intended to give us an indication of what the 20-year vision for this project might look like, how this would fit into City Park, how it aesthetically meshes with the aesthetic of Manhattan, with Aggieville, with City Park, and with the surrounding neighborhoods, and start to give us an idea of how we might phase significant recreation and aquatic center projects such as this. So just to give everyone a little orientation, the primary entry to this facility would be at the top of the page. And as you come in, there's this large gray space in there, which is the lobby area. So as you walk in, to your left or on the plan right, the red area is the administrative offices for the facility. That would be the facility supervisor, staff offices, programmers' offices, so on and so forth. Primary public restrooms on this floor would be located right off the lobby space, and that's gray box adjacent to the main entry. We would have meeting rooms and party rooms there in the teal box there to the left of that. And you can see other entry points off of this lobby as well. As one of our goals is to activate the park, we want to be able to enter this building from different locations in the park, whether it's from the promenade, whether it's directly coming south from Manhattan Avenue, whether it's from the new parking lot, or whether it's from the ice rink and the pavilion and the theater space off to the east side. In the yellow box there, you can see a double gymnasium. That are two full-size high school basketball courts with the opportunity to play pickleball, volleyball, a number of other different court activities there. Associated storage space, and then a cross-training gym as well. So that might have some indoor turf and then some outdoor turf adjacent to that space that's actually out in the park. Other spaces there off the lobby area, the child watch, an indoor playground, and an outdoor play space for that child watch. It's not a state licensed daycare. That's not the intent, but it's intended to be a space where you can drop the kiddos off while you come in, you use the pool, you use the other amenities, you take in a program or a class at the facility. And then a learning kitchen that's associated with that can also provide a catering kitchen component as well. And then the real heart of this project is the natatorium space, so I'll welcome Kyle from Water's Edge to talk a little bit more about that.
Good evening. So the water space is the center part there in the image, and it's basically broken down to 3 areas, taken from the statistically valid survey that Steve and Larry have gone over, and Jason's explained how that came to be. The main part in the middle is an Olympic-sized 50-meter pool that offers flexibility with different bulkhead configurations to give us our different course lengths for different training and competitions. Adjacent to that is a deep water pool, so that would have diving, that would have the programs that utilize deep water for that activity. And the next space is the warm water, and that's a flexible space that offers those recreational amenities like beach entry, play structures, water slides, lazy rivers, warm water therapy. Some of the lighter blue spaces are the support spaces, so those would house the pumps, the filters, the disinfection systems. And then the fourth item to this, and because this is considering this as a 20-year plan, is outdoor aquatics. And that is the hatched area there to show in that space. So that's where the intent would be there. So it'd be located close for staff, be located close for the mechanical equipment, for deliveries of chemicals is why that's orientated over to that space.
Thanks, Kyle. Some other things associated with the indoor aquatics component here is we do have spectator seating with the 50-meter pool for about 1,000 folks, and you can see that in the lines there on the left-hand side of the natatorium. Another feature of the 50-meter pool that we're exploring is it gives you the possibility to have a movable bulkhead within that pool, as well as a movable floor. So really enhance the number of programming opportunities, the number of teams that are able to practice, compete, and other opportunities within that 50-meter pool. We'll go upstairs. We are looking at a 2-story facility here with a total square footage of 170,000 square feet with about 109,500 on the main level. But on the upper level, as we ascend up there, is the main weights and cardio fitness area. It's about a 11,000 square foot fitness area on the upper level with 2 group exercise studios that could be for flexible type group exercise activities, yoga, spin class, aerobics, different things like that. And then an outdoor studio as well that looks out over the park. The other red box that you see up here is Parks and Rec office space. So we'd actually propose relocating them into this facility and consolidating their office area. The running track, which actually encircles the natatorium and the gymnasium, has a lot of opportunity. It's about a 1,500-foot running track, so almost a quarter mile there, or a little over a quarter mile. And then that has the opportunity to actually have what we call a dynamic track with that, is so a portion of that could actually be inclined so that you aren't just running on a flat track all of the time. So most of these spaces are going to look down into the park, they're going to look down into the natatorium, they're going to look down into the gymnasium and really have a great opportunity to be elevated looking out into the park. So again, just to break down of the spaces that we're talking about here, 170,000 square foot total. As it's programmed, the lion's share in a single space would be the natatorium with about 32,000 square feet dedicated to competition aquatics and spectator seating. Recreation aquatics at about 10,166. The outdoor aquatics area is a little bit less than an acre that's outlined for that right now, but again, we're not focusing on what the programmatic components are. I think Tracy said it well. You could really, the sky's the limit, and there are a lot of variables in the recreation aquatics side. Party rooms, we have that at about 1,100 square feet, a 14,000 square foot double gymnasium with the 4,000 square foot turf, indoor turf and outdoor turf area. Fitness studio at just under 12,000 square feet, a couple of studios at just under 2,000 square feet, meeting rooms at about 4,300, the learning kitchen, a child watch and play area to support those. So just kind of an axonometric view. If you were to take the roof off of this building and kind of look down into it, gives you a sense of the size and scale of these spaces and how they relate to each other and how the track looks out over this area as well. So another part of our task on this project was developing architectural renderings, again, just to give an idea of how this fits within the park and within the city. So this is a view looking south from Manhattan Avenue. The picture that Steve showed a little bit earlier was looking down Manhattan Avenue from Aggieville through the new Aggieville sign, but this is coming down and approaching City Park. So really having a presence on Fremont Street there, where you'd see into the gymnasium, the walking track, the outdoor studio, and then the entry as it starts to arc around.
Where do you foresee the outdoor aquatics?
The Outdoor Aquatic Center would be, let me back up here. Oops, wrong way. So the promenade in this view is running diagonally from the upper left corner down to about the middle of the page. That's that promenade that runs through the park diagonally. The Aquatic Center would align with that, and the outdoor aquatics would be on kind of the southeast corner of the facility there. And the intent would be that all of those aquatics, indoor and outdoor aquatics, share some of the changing spaces and other infrastructure that's required so that we're not duplicating that. Oops, I keep going the wrong way. So this is a view looking down the promenade from the northwest corner again. So you'd see the gymnasium there on the left-hand side, that other entry into the lobby, one of the secondary entries. There's the sidewalk that's kind of going in between the building. And then the natatorium and the running track is the large piece that's sweeping up toward. And a view from 14th Street looking east from about Leavenworth, or a little bit north of Leavenworth Avenue on that side. So you can see the natatorium on the right-hand side of the building, the gymnasium, and the training gym on the left-hand side. So the idea with this is you're looking out over the green space, we're pulling the building back, and it's really a backdrop for the green space on the west side of the park. And just our last view of the main entry as we're looking at the facility. So what you see above the main entry in this area would be the fitness room, or the fitness area, the group exercise studios, so on and so forth. Whoops, keep going too fast. We'll bring Pat up here from Barry Dunn, talk about operations.
Good evening, I'm Pat O'Toole, the manager with Barry Dunn. My task was looking at the operation. So we did kind of an order of magnitude O&M budget for what Brian just showed you. And you see that on the lower right. So estimated budget expenses, almost $2 million. Revenue, 1.1 million, for a cost recovery range of 56%, which would mean a general fund or a subsidy level of a little over $850,000 a year. We looked at the aquatics only facility that you did a feasibility study on 2022, and it was between 39% and 46% cost recovery. You see the numbers there on the almost $1.6 million expenses and the 682 in revenue, or 72. We escalated that just like we did with the cost of construction costs going up, and came up with the aquatics only in 2024 would be on your left there. So in essence, by adding the recreation to the aquatic center, the subsidy level goes down, the revenues go up, and you kind of have this supporting within the building between the dry recreation and the aquatic center. So the subsidy level went from that 39 to 46%.
Is the payment to bond and interest in that number?
No, this is all every year without
Just
any
running the place.
without any debt recovery. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, do you have any questions either for me or for the consultant team?
Aaron, I was completely off base. I thought we were going to talk about the thing that's multi-pages talking about each park and the needs and the lack of this or lack of that. And the things I saw in that, I thought we were also going to talk about what our sort of health philosophy is and where we see needs of various different kinds.
So that's what they touched on early, was that.
Yeah, they just showed one thing of it.
Sure,
But
in the
you did
plan.
they did a very, very comprehensive view of every park in the city, some I didn't even know existed,
Uh-huh.
and some which maybe we don't need to have exist, and showed that we possibly are a little overextended in parks. And we're not going to discuss that in the great sum of things with the pool? I mean,
Yes, that will be in the final document. So, again, as a fully comprehensive document, they're going to assess each park, and they're going to have recommendations.
yeah, I saw that, they've done that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so tonight
Did
was,
the other commissioners not see that?
Well, no, Karen, I kind of agree with you. All the questions we were getting is, I mean, they did answer one about City Park and the green space, but of course, what's going to go on with Northview and whether that becomes a splash path, or the fact we have 3 pools and, you know, most cities our size don't have them, so if we're going to go to 1 pool,
No, but
how do
this-
we pay for all of them?
This was at least 70 pages of each park and the red and, you know, the tunnels you had, showing what we were needing in each of those parks. And it just seems to me that until we discuss the things that are lacking in our city parks, it's probably not time to take a giant step to something, you know, new. I mean, nobody got those but me, because I borrowed them from somebody.
yeah, those have not been released yet, except to.
Well, they ought to be released, and the commission ought to have them.
And you will, we're still populating 5 more sections of that plan. That's why it didn't come today. Today was the feedback on kind of the concepts and the 3 park developments, an overall view of the plan. All of that will come forward.
Well, the 2 parts I saw were not as supportive of aquatics as has sort of been portrayed to us tonight. I mean, I was blown away with the thoroughness and the comprehensive study that you've done of every park in Manhattan and what it needs. I was also somewhat shocked at how most of the parks do not rate highly, and what we've got really needs a lot of improvement. And I'm not trying to, you know, not trying to be pushy or anything, but I just, you know, I mean, what I saw was again and again people who wanted indoor plumbing. And then when I saw other things that obviously were, or you put things on the board with buttons, skate park came up really high. I mean, I just think you're asking me to make a decision on a incredibly expensive park, and I understand the reasoning behind it, but I just think we should look at all these other part and parcel of the park and recs that we have before we make giant jumps into indebtedness for one unique thing.
I don't
So
think we're
there-
making any decisions tonight.
Just as a reminder, there, no.
Our
deci-
decision is supposed to go to the Park and Recs Board on Monday.
No.
They're supposed to be told what
the-
we say here tonight.
Yes, the feedback based on this presentation needs to be incorporated into the plan. The park assessment is something that they do as an audit, and that is just part of the document. Now, that's going to come out in the overall master plan, and they would have an implementation schedule based on that. That will all be in that plan.
Well, I think we need to see that, we all need to see that plan.
I would just, again, echo what Karen's saying. I think what you showed, I like it, things look nice and everything else, but to say, well, yeah, we want to go forward with this or having to look at it, has to be done in the context of all those other things. Because most of the feedback I'm getting is talking about what you're talking about. Look how in disrepair everything currently is, and don't we need to do that first before we move on to something else? So, yeah, I like a lot of what I've seen, but the context isn't there.
They're still working on the content.
No, I know you are, but you want my feedback? Yeah, I liked it, but I can't give you a lot of strong feedback, yes or no, till everything else is considered.
And I think the commission probably should have the information about all these other parks and their grade, which is pretty much down here instead of up here, before we make decisions on a $44 million building, you know.
And what I would say is you will have that information prior to making any decision.
But you're asking us for a decision at least a consensus tonight, aren't you?
No, I'm just asking for feedback on what we've presented.
Well, feedback is either we love it or we hate it, isn't it?
Well, there could be multiple items. Do you like where the vision's going? What would you like to see out of this? What is your 20-year kind of vision for Manhattan and Parks and Recreation? When we talk about the components of parks, there's a reason that we chose City Park, Northview, and Northeast Park as part of this overall system. And part of that is who's around them. We're doing improvements at Seco, so looking at this comprehensively, our main gathering points, Seco, City, Northview, Northeast. And all of that complements each other. It doesn't make the other parks not valuable or not important or we won't address items, but these are really kind of the big chunks to connect the system together throughout the entire community. So again, we are going to have that assessment. There's going to be more things in this plan than we can accomplish in 20 years just financially. There will be. We'll have to prioritize. We'll have to make those selections. As staff, in reviewing this, looking at the data of where people congregate right now, other than Annenberg, which is fully developed, Seco, City, Northview, Northeast. That's why these are in front of you. That's why we're looking for that kind of feedback. So it's not to negate or say that you won't have that information. It will be presented to you, and it'll be presented to you in a time before you ever take a vote to adopt the plan, much less anything else on how to try to fund it.
Yeah, Karen, I agree. You know, you weren't here, I think it was about 4 years ago. We talked about all the little smaller parks we've got all over the city, and one of the recommendations was to take out all the playground equipment because it wasn't maintained. And we didn't act on that at the time, and so I would expect, you know, that to be addressed. That there is a maintenance backlog on some of that stuff out there. Mm-hmm. And then again, nobody really has looked at, you know, is it really being used? You know, and so one of the things I find interesting about this plan, I've gotten a lot of feedback because people are focused on really what you presented tonight, not some of the other aspects of it. But part of what I think folks are having trouble with, as you said, this is a vision, a long-term plan. We're not going to make anything happen tomorrow or even probably next year. It's a long-term plan. And as part of that, what does that mean? Well, Seco Pool is eventually going to wear out. And it's going to have to be rebuilt or, you know, maintained. And so does it make sense to just phase it out? You know, just like, you know, when your car hits 250,000 miles, you know, do you renovate it or do you buy a new one? And so I think we got to focus on the idea. When you talk vision, it's an ideal state, you know, 10 or more years out. Mm-hmm. That's how business views it. And so I think that's part of our problem is we're all focusing on the fact that, you know, tomorrow a bulldozer is going to show up and knock down Northview Pool, and that just isn't going to happen. That's not where we're at. No. And if you buy into the long-term vision, and I know a lot of people don't like the idea of another building in City Park, but I think the presentation was good from the standpoint of you've actually added green space, not reduced it. And so to me, that was a very valid point to counter that. But the other thing I find interesting is, you know, we argue about sales tax, and property tax, and mill levy, and there's a big cost in running Parks and Rec. And what this has done is really taken Parks and Rec and put it into, you know, when I taught business classes, it's a business plan rather than totally just a Parks and Rec plan. And you can see that when, originally I didn't like the idea personally, just, you know, everybody's got opinions of, oh, let's put another rec center with the aquatics. But then when you crunch the numbers, it makes sense. And so you can't have it all. You know, I was talking to some of the folks at the chamber and said I thought this at least was a good business plan. And I've always been budget-minded, so I like that aspect of it. But I think one of the people stood up and said, well, the government's not a business. It can't be run the same way. Well, I guess we're probably at odds there. I think that's why our taxes are so high, that we need to do some lean management, and I see a lot of aspects of that in the plan. Now, the specifics, you know, we may come to consensus and say, you know, drive on with this, but you know what happens over 20 years, you know, things change a little bit. And that's what happened with Blue Earth Plaza and a number of other projects that we've done. So that's sort of how I see it, and it's gonna be a real chore to go through this 700-page document to try to hit everything. I mean, you're probably gonna cover that VMI addition park. We've got, almost 100 acres sitting out there that's just wilderness on one edge of town, and what are we gonna do with that? Well, probably nothing for 20 years, but, it's there. So that's sort of, my concept of this. I'm not, opposed to any of it. I think we need a good business plan. We need to understand it's 10 or more years out. It's gonna be phased in, and we're gonna have to figure out how to pay for it, and that's the real challenge.
Yeah, so there, what will come in that final document will be suggested financial strategies. Again, these are suggestions and concepts. This is a complete planning document, and so to your point, pushing it out, even if we had the money to fund it today, we're 2028 probably before we even get a shovel in the ground. Just design's going to take at least 2 years. So we'll have another round of public engagement. You would refine everything and it doesn't matter whether you started in Northview or Northeast, it's going to be approximately the same timeline. That's just projects, especially when you try to capture public input, take that kind of time. And nothing gets done overnight. Now, if we get really good at what we're doing, it appears to come overnight because all they see is us put a shovel in the ground. We talk about it, we put a shovel in the ground, and it's open. But it takes a lot of efficiency to get to that. And, our goal, my goal for Parks and Rec is to become CAPRA accredited. That means only 2% of Parks and Recs in the country are CAPRA accredited. It means you're doing best practices. The baseline of that is a master plan. Master plans are fluid documents. So even when we adopt it, we need to be spending every year updating it. And we are paying a significant amount of money to get this done. So it's important that we're doing that update. That ETC survey, why those are so important to me is that's the community telling us what they want. That's part of why we have focused these areas and why that's being presented to you tonight. It's not that we're ignoring any other part. There will be a lot of stuff that's staff-oriented. The staffing levels, operational information, programs, all of that is included, including a strategic update to the Flint Hills Discovery Center. So there's a lot to come. I think we're going to hopefully have it by Friday, the whole document, and once we do, we'll obviously push that to the commission's way because you'll need time to digest that whole thing.
Me?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm odd man out. I have very individual and specific questions. Sure. I think this was a nice presentation, made me feel a little bit better about the location. I still have some concerns. With consolidated the parking, is that going to be an issue for access for people with disabilities? Are they going to, it's kind of hard to tell from the renderings. I just want to raise that.
No, we would design it in a way that would promote universal access into the middle of the park, okay, including those spaces.
Right now, with the consolidated parking, is that an increased number of parking spaces? Is it the same? You're talking about utilizing the parking garages as well for overflow?
For overflow, yeah. So that would be, we would anticipate the parking lot would handle the daily traffic. If you're hosting an event like a swim meet, that's where that overflow would push. Rather than building for those types of events, we build for our normal daily traffic and then push the overflow to that area.
That comment, Aaron, goes to a challenge that I posted to Superintendent Reed, and I think I might have mentioned it to Dr. Linton, President Linton, when he was here. Are there opportunities here to seek partnership with the school district and the university?
Of course.
Just like Seco Park, a lot of these renovations, particularly the Olympic-sized pool, are going to be focused on competitions that are going to benefit the high school in particular, but the middle schools as well. I'm not sure about, I see the economic benefit of bringing those events into Manhattan. I'm not sure about our underwriting the costs of those facilities for the school district. I would like to see something in place before we make budgetary decisions about a cost share, about a rental agreement, about something.
So
To have their commitment.
that question's come up, and I think without getting, we've got no specifics, but I think the school district is interested in partnering in some way. K-State in 2022 had written a letter, matter of fact, stating that they did not want to be involved, but it sounds like maybe with the change of some leadership there, that maybe that's a new opportunity. I would anticipate, as we adopt a plan, that we would, and if we were moving forward with this proposal, that's when we're going to have some conversations with them to try to get them on board. The other thing I would state is that regardless, that space will not be used for free by anybody. So there would be a charge that comes with that as part of that operational cost recovery. And I would also push back on that is built for the school. It's not. We would host competitions ourselves. And you heard him mention the movable floor. And I know we are identifying spaces as like fitness studio and this, but I really believe in designing facilities so that you can maximize their universal use. The movable floor, the intent of that is when you're doing competition swimming, you need a 7-foot depth, at least where you're diving in. They prefer a little bit deeper water. That was what we found in some of our stakeholder interviews. For swim lessons, you need to have a smaller depth. So that movable floor moves up for us to use that as swim lesson space when we're not hosting regular competitive swim teams, whatever that may be. So the idea is we would make that space as usable across the programming spectrum as we could.
Is that in the Olympic-sized pool or the other? All right, so you've talked on different occasions about pools break down. They get equipment deteriorates under those conditions. I appreciate that technology changes and that there are more secure ways to do this. Having a movable floor, movable bulkhead, and where does the water go when you raise the floor up? It sounds like there's a lot of...
It doesn't displace the water.
What?
It doesn't displace the water. The bulkhead stays in the pool the whole time. So when you go to 50 meter, you're actually just pushing it back against the back wall. So it just moves in the water. It stays in there indefinitely. And I can have, but in the movable floor, again, it doesn't displace the water.
It's if you imagine it's grading, whether it's the floor or the bulkhead, so the water just passes through. So the floor, there's hydraulic rams that lift it up and put it whatever depth you need to use it, to Aaron's point, whatever program you want to facilitate. And then the bulkheads just, you inflate them and they start to float, and then you roll them or slide them to whatever position you want to have for whatever course you want to train at or you compete at. So they don't fit in a pocket, they don't move water, water passes through both of them.
I had one other question. All right, so a technical question, and maybe Jason could address this in the report of the surveys. How did you extrapolate from the survey results to the number of households impacted?
Sure. You're talking about the unmet needs. So there's a question where we have a list of a number of different amenities and programs. We ask households how well their needs are being met. And one option is your needs, you don't have a need at all. So what we do is we take the percentage of respondents who say their needs are being partially met or not met, and then multiply that by the number of households in the city based on U.S. Census data.
Two last questions. I take it in the survey you did not ask if, from what I gathered looking at it quickly today, that there were no questions asked about current use of other indoor facilities. So are you a member of Genesis? Do you go to the pool at 4 Points? Are you driving to Wamego? Do we have that information?
Yeah, no, we didn't ask that. No.
In the past, when the city has wanted to do recreation facilities, there has been pushback from some of the private gyms.
Sure.
How are we going to deal with that this time?
Well, I think if we were to move forward, I made a commitment that I would meet with them again prior to kicking anything off to see how we could do that together. I would also point to the survey that it's a high priority that they've asked Parks and Rec to do adult fitness. And so that's where that's being generated out of, is that priority investment rating out of the survey.
One last comment is some of the percentages reported in the report were kind of underwhelming or overwhelming if you looked at, would you vote for a sales tax to support this? 50% saying yes or maybe is a little waffly to me. So I'm a little bit concerned about that.
So I would also point out that they're saying yes, sight unseen. Meaning they don't have an idea, they just want it that bad. Again, that's open to interpretation, but without knowing the ballot language, they're saying we will vote for this. And one of the intent was to be very direct with that question to try to figure out, we say we want this, are we willing to pay for it? And to arm you with that kind of information. And since Commissioner Mata brought it up, and it's been a topic out there, talking about long-term, there's an idea that was out there as a financial discussion about shutting down pools, and the mayor kind of talked about that. Hypothetically speaking, if we were to do that, we're probably 20 years away from doing that, 15 at least. The one that would maybe be earliest, and probably 2035, 2040, based on generating capital to do it, would be Cities Park to do the consolidation in order to put the other amenities in. So by the time we're really looking at it, we're going to be between 30 and 50 years old in those pools before we talk about that. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do shut them down. I'm suggesting we have the financial conversation around that. How much water should we operate and at what cost? Hypothetically speaking, if this is funded and we open indoor water, we're at a $2 million subsidy starting the day we open. So $2 million in tax dollars. Now, one of those facilities will go year round. In 2023, another way to look at how much we spent on water was we operated for 11 weeks and it cost us $100,000 in tax dollars a week. That's a significant amount of money. So as we move forward, are there more cost-effective ways to provide that water and provide amenities in those neighborhoods? Or are we comfortable with moving to $3 million or $4 million or $5 million in a subsidy? Somewhere there's got to be a line. Sure. And part of that is a discussion. Now the good news is we're talking 2040, 2050, so we've got time to make that discussion. But we also want to talk about that in the plan. So if that's something we do, we're not springing it on somebody. And the reality is we're doing that later on down the line. It's known. People can prepare for it. We can make any adjustments that we would need to provide transportation, to create a different alternative. By that time, maybe the update in the plan is another community pool centrally located that's more efficient. So there are a litany of things to do, and we can update that annually. So when I talk about a financial discussion, it's really surrounding, when it comes to pools, how much water are we willing to have and how much are we going to subsidize?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a couple.
Sure.
Okay, so looking at the system-wide priorities on page 16, indoor aquatics only facility and new recreation center, including an indoor pool, those had by far the highest number of strongly disagrees. Mm-hmm. What do you think that comes from? Or do you think it's just
And you're referencing slide 16?
Yeah.
Just so I'm looking at the same thing. That one. So you're saying,
I'm looking at
just to make sure I understand the question.
Yeah.
Indoor aquatics only has the highest disagreement, and a new rec center with indoor pool has the highest disagreement. Well, they cost a lot of money.
Yeah. Do you think it's just a financial thing, or?
No, I think there are people that envision that they won't use it. I do think finance is a piece of that. I think there's the argument that we have 3 pools already and 2 rec centers, or 3 rec centers. So I think, and what is a rec center? Like when I talk to people about what a rec center is to them, a lot of times it leans into a fitness component. And it does have that. But what I'm used to in the industry is this much more holistic facility that you're doing arts and you're doing fitness and you're doing classes out of, or cooking, whatever it may be, this very diverse kind of building where we gather people in. One of the intents of this, as they stated, was to create community gathering points. And so kind of energizing the parks, energizing these facilities where people will come and gather from all walks of life. It's not just about sports. It's not just about fitness. It's about a holistic approach to health and wellness.
Yeah, I think that's a really good explanation. And then I had just a kind of a picky question. With 4 entry points to this facility, how do we control access?
Well, if you've watched Parks and Recreation and Ron Swanson's Circle Desk,
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. That's a great design question. I was thinking the exact same thing as that slide was up there. So again, this is a conceptual thing. I think we would have to do some planning around what that looks like and what that entails.
Yeah.
I can envision us doing unmanned kiosks. In fact, Jason's smiling. He's heard me talk about this. We are moving more towards an automated society. And I would just challenge people to go in the grocery store and look at behavior. And they're waiting in line for the self-checkout rather than going to the line with a person in it. So people are used to helping themselves. That's one option. Apparently up here to tell me how to do this.
No, that's great. I was just going to add, there are 4 entry points that we showed in that lobby plan. The point is not to use all 4 on a daily basis.
Okay.
The main control desk is outside the administrative offices for the facility, and that's to consolidate staff so that they have visibility of all those entry points. But the primary entry is the one that's open when the facility's in business hours.
Yeah.
You may be able to exit only. You may be able to utilize those during a swim competition or something when you have a lot of influx of traffic. But Aaron's spot on all of his points as well. So.
I like the concept of trying to make it accessible from all directions, especially if we're trying to encourage walkability and bikeability and stuff like that. It was just
a lot of it's more visibility,
okay,
and connectivity
yeah,
to the promenade, to the park, to Aggieville, to all of these different areas, and stitching all that together and connecting, the interior of the building to all of those exterior spaces as well.
Sure.
So I could see a keyless entry based like with your phone.
Yeah.
That if you're a member, you can access anytime. But if you need to pay, you'd have to access through the front desk. That'd be another option.
It's certainly for a safety standpoint, we would need to have multiple entrances and exits.
I think overall, this plan is very needed. And you look at the number of people that are here tonight. First of all, thank you for showing up and all of the feedback that we've all gotten. I think that is incredibly important because this is about the community. And, when we talk about having a livable, vibrant community, we can't have that if we don't have good parks. This is just, like you said, it is a long-term plan. It's not binding. You've mentioned that it's going to be a fluid document, and I think that's a very important thing for people to understand where we are in this process. we are not making any decisions right now. We're making very general plans and having a vision, and they're more like guidelines. And we have to have that if we're going to improve our parks, which is something that I think any member of our community would agree we need desperately. This specifically, I love the promenade going through City Park. I think it's a great way. We've talked about trying to connect Aggieville with downtown, and it is straight through. We can make sure we have plenty of light, things like that, so people can safely walk down in the dark. And it does really kind of refresh that park. It has a lot of really, the native prairies and things like that. There's a lot to like about it. I do understand the concerns about the historic uses of City Park. And I think it's important to be sensitive to that and recognize it. We're not tearing down the old Pioneers building and the Rose Garden and things like that. And I think it's important to highlight those. And in fact, where it is right now, that Pioneers building is kind of just stuffed behind the pool. It's almost more highlighted now with that plaza right next to it.
So one of the things that's not shown in this slide, but we talked about in our initial concept, is this would be what we call the historic area. Mm-hmm. And it would allow us the ability to kind of tell the history of the park from its inception as a racetrack to how they allowed camping in the 30s and trying to get tourists here. And, preserving this great rose garden, obviously it would help engage, we believe, with the Pioneer Cabin. But there's a awful lot of storytelling that can be done in this section that becomes kind of interpretive signage, but it could be interactive. And really kind of talk about holistically that park and its history. So we are very cognizant of that. Of course, we're keeping the roundhouse. So we earmark these things that we would consider mainstays that need to not be touched in the park. And we want to celebrate that kind of history through that storytelling. So
yeah. Again, I think it's great. I think the financial piece is going to be I think the biggest hurdle to jump over, but it is a question that we have to ask the community of how much do we value parks, and will we put our money where our mouths are? Is that something that we want to do? So as we move through this, obviously we're going to want to look at the details, the nitty-gritty of that. But in order to do that, we have to have a vision. So I think this is a really good presentation, has a lot of really good information. And again, we are in a process of figuring this out, and we will be in a continual feedback loop to try and make sure that we're keeping in touch with the community.
Just wanted to give you the feedback I think you were after in this, and I think you showed with your statistics, everything else, that City Park is the place to do what you're talking about, what you have up on the screen, which is, a debate amongst a lot of people that you've shown it. Now, the one part of that demographics for the young kids are in that Northview area.
Yeah.
That are over there, so we have to be cognizant of that fact. You did point out about how it's actually more green space, which I looked at ahead of time, talked to people about that. There's a lot of skepticism about that really being true, so I think that we really have to get that out there or show people that really is the case.
Yeah.
And while this is out 10, 20 years, I think people do want to get that indoor aquatics sooner than that, and they want it before their kids get too old to be able to use it. And I know we've talked about how communities our size don't have 3 pools, and now we're adding to that cost structure. So when it does come back to cost, that is going to be a big question. So, yeah, I liked everything I've seen, and we're going to get that cost later. But I do like what you did with Northview over there, and I think that'd be very appreciative. It's just how do we work all that into the plan?
Yeah. So I do think one of the pieces of confusion early on was we had labeled kind of the historic area and the event lawn space as areas which people, I think, believed were some sort of development. They are a development, but they're a green space development. So an event lawn would be, used for festival usage, and then the kind of the plaza next to the pavilion would be kind of a food truck area that you can have and create these kind of festivals, again, in the middle of that park to draw in and play off the amphitheater and make sure that we can have that kind of entertainment in that centralized area of the park, again, back to that community gathering. So yeah, I mean, my intent is, are you guys okay with the vision so far? And, we'll get you the details. We've got the steering committee and park board meeting next week to kind of review that initial draft, and we'll.
Aaron, I
send it
still
out.
got a few questions, though.
Sure.
We need indoor swimming. The Marlins need it, the high school needs it, everybody needs it. There's no question about that. The question is, does it have to be city park? You've only given us one option. I mean, I'm certainly for indoor pools, but I haven't heard any other possibility, like could it be at Seco? Do we have to, can we do it in parts? Can we do all the rec stuff after we do the pool? Can we just have lanes for, can we make it smaller and not try and have competition there? But that would not be good for the, in the report that nobody saw but me, it talks about new trends, and I don't think, I just think we need to look holistically at all of our parks and say, before I say, the most important thing to me is indoor aquatics. I don't know, skate park is very important to me. After you told me it was going to cost $2 million, I got in touch with a bunch of people who build skate parks, and they told me Manhattan's skate park should not cost more than $500,000. So that, pickleball, disc golf, dog parks, water fitness, and what about the trends? If we're not going to do this for 20 years, where are we going to be with virtual fitness? I mean, is everybody just going to stay home and do it in their, in their house? I mean, body weight training, that kind of thing. A nature center, generational programming, STEM programming, parkour. I mean, I think we've got to sit back and see what fits Manhattan. Definitely I support indoor swimming, absolutely. But I just feel like you're giving me not a lot of options. You're telling me where the entrance doors are going to be on this thing, and I don't even know if I want the building there.
Sure.
And I don't know that the park and rec board, the people I've talked to on there, are quite as in agreement as you seem to think they are. You didn't give us any other options.
So again, we explored the three options, Seco, Northview, and City Park, and the demographics led us to
And we being,
the Esri data that was studied
yeah, but
based
you
on the
didn't
data
ever show us the
analysis.
data, and it may be worthwhile to us to spend more money to do it someplace else. If the city park people are very angry about the fact that, say what you will, it's going to be a lot of concrete. Even the walk-through is, fire trucks can drive on it. I really wish we could tell the park board, we want indoor pools and go with it. But also, let's just, we're flooding here.
No,
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I'll quit.
So I think
Peter's
I heard a
flushing
few
me out.
questions in there. So
When Peter's had enough, he's had enough.
the Seco option, the property would be owned by the county.
I know. I was a county commissioner, but
And
we're just not even looking at all the things we could possibly be looking at, is what I feel. So let's tell the park board, we want indoor pools, we do, and see what they have to say with this report and the complete report, which they will see hopefully Monday.
Yes. So the steering committee has actually been tasked with this development. Now, the park board is a piece of that, but I would also point out that the commission did appoint a specific steering committee for this study. So they again will get this full study, offer their remarks on the draft, and that's when we'll make those changes and move forward. We looked at several locations. Outside of this, there could be another location. We would have to go purchase land somewhere.
Okay, we've still got a room full of folks here. So, and we did vote to allow public comment, and I want to remind everyone that you can speak once, and limited 5 minutes. There's a little timer there. A buzzer will go off when your time is up, and there's a pen and a sign-in sheet there. So be sure you sign in and put your name on there and your address. And before you speak, also tell us who you are and where you live. So is there anyone that wishes to make public comment? Step up to the podium.
I'm Shauna Ballman. I work at Shepherd's Crossing, and I live up in Tatarax. Am I supposed to give my exact address? I can't remember. Is that 3111 Harahe Ridge? One of the things that I noticed, the original, first of all, this was great. I missed the very beginning, but I read a lot. And if anyone saw what you did in Garden City, it's really impressive. One of the things it seems like it wasn't addressed was the original steering committee. There are a lot of people here that were at the original steering committee, and the information that was gathered in that would have answered a lot of the questions. It was asked, where are people going, I think was one of the questions right now to get pool access. I have a neighbor that goes to Junction City every day. I know a lot of people that go to Genesis. There's a struggle with pool water quality sometimes, and again, it's very small. Trying to get everything out there. I think something that's very important is that it happens faster than this. I think it's really smart to think about finding a way we can do it in steps. We need water now. Our high school swim team got third in state, and they're swimming in this dinky little pool that isn't even regulation size. And part of that too is because they're driving to Topeka to practice on weekends. And then the only reason they didn't win the league this year is because we didn't have a diving team. Had so many things that I wanted to say. Oh, my husband's looking at that. I think one of the things we need to focus on is really think about speed and getting a pool sooner. For safety for the kids, for swim lessons, also there needs to be a focus on low income having access to water as well. And I'm disappointed I forgot some of my points, but I'll remember next time.
Email us, yes,
okay,
please.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, folks. I'm David Javoltowski, 100 South Delaware. I really want to thank the Park and Rec staff and the consulting team for putting together a pretty good proposal. I want to talk a little bit about the process. Aaron mentioned that he really wants to seek Park and Rec accreditation, and I think that's real important. But what's kind of happening here is Park and Rec is professionalizing Park and Rec. And we're starting to institute business practices, and we're starting to run Park and Rec like a business and do projections and cost estimates. And so you could say that's a good thing, but it also has its issues, right? So if we look at trends nationally, Park and Rec's dying, and you ask the question, why? Right. And one of the reasons is the free market industry for fitness and the not-for-profit, I call it the for-profit, not-for-profit youth sport industries, rapidly growing, right? And what we're seeing at K-State with the professionalization of college sport is becoming basically a free market youth sport system. So I would really like to see the plan address, and Karen kind of mentioned this, everything going on, both government, free market, and not-for-profit services in Manhattan. And then I think we need to step back and ask the larger big picture question is, where are people getting these services? How do they get them? And what's government's role in delivering in this new world of a free market and a not-for-profit system? Personally, I think government should provide facilities, and then we should look for different ways to do delivery. But these issues, I mean, we don't even know where people are going right now. And that's because we centralize all delivery in the old park and rec model of government delivers. The other thing that happens out of that old model is to get efficiencies, cost efficiencies, you got to consolidate. So rather than having 3 pools, you go 1 pool. You go big pool. Rather than having multiple park and rec gyms, you build 1 gym because it's more efficient to go big. It's a little bit like wiping out all the elementary schools and going to a few big ones, like every big city's done, right? It's more efficient in 1 unit. Part of the reasons for that is they don't build into the calculation the cost of building the 1 big thing, and they don't really build into the calculations of what would happen if you look at this decentralized, messy system. So if you look at those estimates today, it was kind of interesting. Didn't ask the question, what's the revenue at our existing park and rec centers? And how do we increase the revenue there to offset building a pool or offset the cost? I can pick on the data. The survey data is interesting. It's 400 people. It's sampled. They never gave you a return rate. But so it's a useful source of information. But it's a flashlight. It's being used as a hammer. It's just a piece of information. The Pacer AI data, or excuse me, the park data, where they're looking at usage of the parks, it's based on, I just generated it, by the way. We had like 5,000 visits at City Park over the last month. So 4 to 5, it depends on what month you look at. But it's based on basically, do you allow your cell phone to track? And then it's based on a 10-minute usage of a space. So it gets a little tricky, right? Because if you notice, all that heat map data didn't pick up anybody going around the outside of the park. It doesn't pick up free use data very well because it's designed to map store use. I got 43 seconds left. So I just want to say then, to summarize, we need to look at the whole system. We need to ask the question, what's government's role? And I think we do need to figure out how to rapidly move to an indoor pool. And I think that could be a university. I don't know what that could be, but we're not asking that question. We're using the old model, centralize it, have government do it, have government ask people to pay for it. And if you've been in this town long enough, you know that it's going to be a tough sell.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? 2 microphones ready to go.
Yeah, there's plenty of seats up front. You don't have to stand.
Hello, I'm Tanya Firsova. I live near City Park. So I'm really concerned about the new facility being built there. And the usage of the green space, like, it's reassuring that the numbers are better, but trees take time to grow. You know, we see this data, and the data shows that people are less likely to use the places that have less shade. We are going to rebuild everything. We are going to cut down some of the trees, and hopefully in many, many years, we're going to get the new trees. That will be good green space in many, many years to come, but not anytime soon. I teach math at K-State, and as a mathematician, I want to question some statistics. So we are told that City Park is a good place because it is, we have disadvantaged community living next to the city park. So I want to make sure that this disadvantaged community will actually be able to use the new facility. And there will be fee to it. We need to know what this fee and what will be the, like, what the people living around the city park who can walk to it will actually be able to use it. And I suspect that lots of people who like disadvantaged community are students who might be using the aquatic facilities, but I do not expect them to use the rec facilities because the rec facility, they are already paying for the rec facilities at K-State. So I don't see, and if we look at the surveys tell us that people want aquatic facility, and we are suggesting to build like the whole rec center attached to this facility that's going to occupy much bigger area than it should, like than just the pool will occupy. And what I see in the data is that it will be, the only reason to do that is because it will be economically beneficial because the community around the city park will use it and pay for it. And like, why do we expect that? Why do we, I want to see the numbers, I want to see the actual numbers that it will be more beneficial. And I don't think we need another rec center. We built several rec centers over the years. And they are free, which is great. We're going to build a new one that's not going to be free, that we don't, in my opinion, really need. That will, I think we should build, we need an indoor pool, we should concentrate on the indoor pool. And I think I'll stop here.
Can you please state your name and address? I know you wrote it down, but just for the microphone.
So, Tanya Fersova.
And where do you live?
I live on Osage Street, so walking distance to City Park.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone else that wishes to make public comment?
It's actually my neighbor. I'm Ryan Wilson. I live at 1634, one number off. I think City Park is the right place for the pool. It is within walking distance of not only me, but many other people. And it also has a good synergy with Aggieville and the university right there. So there's a lot of overlap of activities that I think can happen between the two. And I think because of that, it adds to the vibrance and richness of the area while adding a much needed amenity. I did have a couple comments on the site plan, and the number one thing that I think was offered with the highest impact is thinking about the trails and connectivity of our pedestrian and trail network. And we have a brand new bike lane on Manhattan that just kind of now dead ends into this kind of feature moment of the building. And I think it would be good to consider the overall network and how Manhattan goes all the way on the east side of the campus and could potentially, and I think long-term plans, have it connecting all the way out to Linear. Keeping that in mind and the completeness of the trail system, I think would be a good to consider and maybe rework the plan a little bit to include a more direct connection. And I could have just missed about how that does connect through. And I think I agree with a more approach with phasing over time. And that way we can get a pool faster and then add on to it if it's really successful. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Gail Urban. I live at 1627 Wyndham Heights, and I've been a proponent of Parks and Recreation in this community for 25 years. I first off want to commend team, the consulting team that put this report together, and also the steering committee that has been quite comprehensive. I am currently serving on the Seco Park Advisory Committee. I also chair the new Manhattan Parks and Recreation Foundation that is designed to make sure that we are serving the underprivileged community and make sure that they have access to all Parks and Rec programs and facilities as we become better responsibility toward our taxpayers and our tax dollars. I think that's extremely important. I think we've missed that mark in Parks and Recreation over the years. And we do have beautiful indoor recreation centers that I worked very hard on 10 years ago and 12 years ago, and help fund some of those studies and facilitate some of the studies. We've studied indoor aquatics in this community for 15 years, at least. That's just, I mean, very specifically studied indoor aquatics in this facility. I think the plan that's been presented tonight is extremely comprehensive. It is a 20-year plan. It meets what the community is asking for. I think we should adopt it immediately, look for a very specific question to be put in front of voters and allow them to make the decision on whether or not they want to fund or get started funding a 20-year comprehensive plan that is dedicated to improving parks and recreation in this community. I think we need to stop holding parks and recreation budget hostage to the general fund it specifically, and be specific in our plan. This plan does that. I think we need to get on board and begin the process, begin the 20-year process. We've given it 15 years studying it to death. It's time to move forward on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Hello, my name is Ezekiel Cole. I've lived in Manhattan my entire life, and I don't know if it was somewhat apparent, but I was a diver on the MHS swim and dive team. I graduated in 22, so COVID kind of made that a little bit hard, but the other thing that made it really hard is it was very abruptly taken away from me when K-State's indoor pool shut down. I was 6th at state my sophomore year, and with prospect to go much higher, possibly even win. The next year, after K-State's pool shut down, I was forced to drive to Topeka 3 days a week on my time, my money, my car. I got 11th that year in state, and I know that there's other swimmers, coaches here, that will fully agree an indoor pool is entirely necessary. Swim and dive meant a lot to me, and it means a lot to a lot of the people in Manhattan too. And so an indoor pool, if not the rest of the park stuff, an indoor pool, I think, is entirely necessary for our kids, families, all of that. Also, I don't know if it was mentioned in the plan, but a diving well would be cool.
It was in there.
Sweet! That's all I really have to say, but not gonna.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your attention tonight. My name is Matt Enoch, and I live at 2707 Browning. My family first arrived here in the fall of 1854, and like my uncle Isaac Goodnow, I am an instructor at K-State, where I teach Parks and Recreation Administration. So I have the double perspective of being a deeply rooted Manhattanite and credentialed in Parks and Recreation Management. And what I want to say to you is that simply Aaron is providing you with a wonderful product here. He's engaged with the community. He has some of the best consultants to work with. The ETC Institute that did the needs survey for the plan does all kinds of the same kinds of plans for the U.S. Army. I forgot to mention that I'm the Chief of Recreation at Fort Riley. Sorry. So I'm familiar with their work, and it's top notch. I think that it's important to make sure we maybe take a step back and maintain perspective here. We're just getting started with the plan. We've never had anyone even close to as qualified as Aaron in this position. We've never had anybody like Gail to run a Parks and Rec Foundation. We've got amazing citizens like Tracy Anderson stepping up and giving his time and talent to put his skin in the game, so to speak. So we haven't had anything like this. And speaking from the perspective of a Park and Rec professional who's very aware of the industry standard at the national level, we're moving in the right direction here. Aaron is doing things in the right way, and we're not familiar with this. But if you look at what they've been able to do in similar communities like Ames and Stillwater, and dare I say it, Lawrence, this is what we're going to get with this level of professionalism. In terms of the public sector managing these kinds of facilities, bear in mind that this is how we maintain equitable access to the whole of our community. And I know Aaron will get into how he plans to ensure that while everybody will pay, he's got a great idea of how to run scholarship programs and remove barriers to ensure equitable access that the private sector simply is not able to do. Maintaining that high level of professionalism keeps us on point with industry standard, and that keeps the quality very high. And right now, I would say probably the top priority in the public Parks and Rec sector in the industry is maintaining sustainability. And I'm not talking about environmental sustainability, but I'm talking about financial sustainability, having a cost recovery model that allows us to maintain those high level of services in a way that the taxpayer is willing to support. So I just wanted to come up here and support Aaron and the foundation, the consultants, and support the notion that what you're getting here is something you may not be useful, a highly professional, highly well done product that will lead us to success. And I ask for your patience as Aaron takes you through and presents to you what the people are asking for. And what I tell my students is there's a difference between what you think people want and what they want. And I think what Aaron's trying to tell you is what he has found that people want. Thank you for your attention, and look forward to many years to come of getting better in Parks and Rec Manhattan.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. Excuse me while I spell my last name of Steffensmeyer. Okay, my name is Tina Steffensmeyer, and I live at 721 Harris Avenue. I have 3 children, and they all started swimming at young ages. My son was on the team that placed 3rd at state. So I get that every parent thinks that the sport their kid does is the most important. And I don't want to come across that way, but I have been driving to Fort Riley, Alma, Wamego, and I think this is a great plan. The part that is hard for those in the community that care so much about swimming and having these facilities is the timeline. That it's hard to imagine this not happening for another 20, 30 years. I like it. Part of the reason I like it is because it's the closest thing we've had to some movement. And we've been talking about this. And, you know, I guess what I want to voice is that we need to take some action. I really wish, from my perspective, even if we move forward with this, I wish there was a way we could take it in steps and get this indoor pool going. And obviously, I care about that so much, but I think that most of the people I'm talking to don't want to hear, oh, there's a possibility of this. We need to move on it. So this is, again, I support this plan. And I just ask that we not keep talking about it and just take some action. It's very important to a lot of different people. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie Minton. 3012 back 9 circle. Forgot it for a second. I'm a member of the steering committee, so I felt like I just wanted to come up here and to address some of the things you said, Commissioner McCullough, about wanting to see, more of the studies. What are people saying? As a steering committee member, we did look at all of that, and we've had a lot of discussions about this, seen, different options. No, do we see full renderings of all the other parks, but discuss like why this was a great option. And I can't speak for the whole steering committee, but I can say walking out of those meetings, it's a very supportive meeting. We're very excited. We do have some lively discussion and lively debates that have gotten to where this is and what we were seeing today. And not just because it's what the community needs now, because it really does, but the goal is that it lasts us for years and years and years. We can't go back and, we shouldn't need to go back and build it again. So it's very exciting. Being a part of the steering committee has been wonderful because we're getting to see, finally, I feel like a chance where we're not playing catch up in this town, especially with Parks and Rec. And it's not about Parks and Rec investment, it's overall community investment. It's tourism, it's retention, it's all of the things. It's not just about having really awesome parks, it's about having solid community. So that was all.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bruce McMillan, 1920 Sunset Lane. Obviously, you have received a very detailed presentation this evening, very well done, and I commend the design team emphatically for the amount of work that they've put into this. This process is one that, and I'm charging the commission, I guess personally here, that there are differing opinions that I've heard, all the way across the board this evening from the folks in the room, even here at the table. But this project is of a scale and a magnitude that this cannot go forward on a 3-2 vote or a 4-1 vote. You need to come to a conclusion for a unanimous support of whatever you decide is a proper process here, and be sure that you're in concurrence. Split vote isn't going to be a positive note on this particular subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Mel Borst, 1918 Humboldt Street. When our families lived here since 1969, both across from City Park on the east side and in the neighborhoods surrounding City Park, and still use it quite a bit today. I'm concerned about the scale of the building that would be put in the park, as well as the accompanying parking lot, the surface parking. For all of the time I've enjoyed the park,
it's because it's been open. And, before the pool was enlarged and, with the, there was just not much in the way of bulky buildings in the park, and it was a real joy. And I think we see some comment from the Historic Resources Board about looking back historically at this area. It was meant to be open and not used as a, development area. And we also, I understand, there were ideas of putting a high school in the city park at one time, this city hall in City Park at one time. And the community decided that it was more valuable as open space. And I believe in planning. I think it's very important. I admire the planning that was done for this, but if we could put it all underground and leave the upper part open, that would be a fine thing, but we can't do that. But I think it's, I think if we look long-term, keeping the park as open as possible is going to be our best investment. And perhaps there's another alternative for a indoor pool and rec center, perhaps in City or Seco Park. But also, we do have recreational facilities in this area. One is Peace Memorial Auditorium right behind us, and the new rec center at Douglas, down at Douglas. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mel. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
I'm Betty Banner at 618 Osage Street, and I too am a member of the current foundation committee and served on the previous committee, and some of you know that I'm a lifelong swimmer. I'd like to address a concern that I have not heard exactly in this room, but suspect exists about the number of people who said they don't have a need or they don't know why we need a pool. It is my impression or opinion that people in the dry prairie areas of the world do not understand the value of water activities. And so there is a lesson to be learned there. I would also point out that water is the one activity that has been an activity for the world from the beginning, back to the Roman times to now. Water is the only thing that has been in the Olympics from Rome on. I think when people learn what they can do, they will further understand. The other thing is that water is the only activity that can serve every single individual of this community, whether it is an infant or a 102-year-old person, whether they are fully capable with all of their facilities or handicapped. Water activities can be helpful to them. And we need to have a facility that can serve all of our population. Furthermore, I believe that it will be an economic benefit to the community. Nobody's talked about the people outside of Manhattan who might use this facility, about, for instance, firefighters and other people who need to learn diving so that they can save people out at Tuttle Creek or provide other kinds of community services. People who live in the surrounding communities, outside of Wamego, who gets a lot of our swimmers over there, may well be coming here. So we need to do this. We need to do it now. I too was hesitant about City Park, but I believe now that we have a place. This committee, over the 2 or 3 committees that I've been on, has explored many places in the community before finding one that will be able to meet the needs that we need to have. So I just simply want to say that I really support it, and I certainly hope that the commissioners will support it as well. Thank you.
I'm Deborah Cole. We live over on Trees Mill. We moved to Manhattan in 1980, and I grew up as a pool rat at Northview swimming pool. I think being able to swim at Northview probably saved my life as a young child and kept me involved and engaged with a group of friends that I would never have had otherwise. We could not afford a membership at K-State at the rec center, but we had some friends who could, and sometimes we would go with them, and I grew up swimming in that diving well, the same diving well my kids ended up practicing in up until COVID. I also, I'm embarrassed to say this with my children in the room, but I was one of the no votes who would not support. And I voted no originally because our taxes are high, and we're struggling to stay in town. Since that time, and I don't know if it's statistically significant or not, I would like to flip my vote because I sustained an injury running, and I can no longer run or walk well. The only exercise I can do is swimming. I cannot afford a membership to Genesis. There's no place for me in town to swim and to exercise. And I think that's a travesty in a town the size of Manhattan. What Zeke didn't share with you was what it was like as a parent to be calling around for 2 straight weeks in a 2-mile radius trying to find a diving well for him to practice in. And he didn't tell you that he missed a full year of practice because we couldn't find an athletic director who was willing to let him dive. My oldest son plays second at state. His senior year, dove all 4 years. Zeke dove the 3 that he could, and my youngest son, Ezra, is a letter winner in swimming right now at Manhattan High as a freshman. We also chose to play traveling baseball and spent a lot of money on traveling baseball because the price to participate with the Marlins was more than we could afford. So I want to just come from the affordability standpoint. I want to flip my vote, largely in support, and we have to find a way to make it affordable for kids like me who grew up in the Northview area, who would not have had another opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Keith Birnbaum. I live at 114 Fremont Street, just across from City Park. I've worked as the assistant swim coach for the past 5 years. I think we've beat the, I forget the term, beat the dead horse or something like that about the need for a facility in Manhattan, but I just want to give more of my personal perspective over the past 5 years of living in Manhattan. I live at 114 Fremont Street, right across from City Park, and I love living in the area I live in. It's extremely walkable. I could go get stuff from Varsity Truck. I could even walk all the way to downtown. I could walk to the meeting I came to today. I think it's an amazing place to live, and I want to live here, honestly, for the rest of my life. But when I hear that the plan is not going to be, or we're not going to be able to get a facility for until my kids are like in high school and stuff like that, that's a terrifying proposition. And I know that if that's what, we would go forward with, I just can't justify living in Manhattan with how much I value aquatics personally. And I just think that you guys should try and consider that younger perspective that a lot of people want aquatic facility within their facility or within their community, and that it's really an expected amenity of communities of this size. There's been research done, a bit dated now, but 96% of communities our size have a facility that is open year-round. And I don't know why I would want to stay in Manhattan when there is just a plethora of other cities that I could go to and not have to wait 20 years for an aquatic facility. Even further going, Genesis, I'm so proud of how our athletes have done this year with the somewhat unfortunate facilities they've had, but I just know that they could go so much further and that we will have gotten solo third at state this year if we would have been able to have some diver or anything in place. So I would just echo the need for speed in the development of aquatic facility in the next, hopefully less than a decade. Thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I bring up a point of clarification? It's not going to take 20 years to build the pool. That the whole plan for all of the parks in Manhattan will be over the time of 20 years. But I think we're trying to prioritize the pool in the next, it'll still take 3 or 4 years at least, but not 20.
Yeah, I was just about to jump in for that clarity. based on the survey data, we would say the aquatic facility would be the priority in moving forward if it was adopted and then funded. Again, you're going to spend some years in design. I just want to give a realistic timeline. If we beat this, we look good. But the realistic timeline would be we would open probably 2030. So if everything moved forward just right on schedule without any impediments, you're looking at several years of design, but 2030 kind of for an opening. The 20 years is the entire plan as entirety. So just a point of clarification.
I guess on that note, we close public comment because we already jumped into other comments. So public comment's closed.
No, we can keep having
But
public comment.
I don't see anybody else jumping up there. We'll just close it. And,
We have any?
okay, one last person. Kathy.
Best for last, right?
Can I go after her?
Such a long name to have to write that down. Kathy Jeweltowski, I live at 100 South Delaware Avenue. I support the notion of an indoor pool, but I am concerned about the proposed location of City Park. We're talking about a 170,000 square foot facility, and I honestly don't think I have a concept of another building in town. I'm sure there's buildings that big, but what I'm saying is I don't have a concept of what's another building that size so that I can visualize how giant of a thing we're talking about putting in City Park. Just looking at that number, I'm thinking, holy smokes, that thing is massive. And to act like, well, you know, we're going to gain an acre, is downplaying that that is going to be a huge change visually to City Park and will have a huge visual impact. And to just act like, well, we're going to take out the parking lots and we're going to consolidate parking so it'll be fine, is really not taking into account how visually that will change the park. Because yes, right now it is heavily programmed with tennis courts and ball fields and so on, but I can walk by and visually see all the way through the park with very few buildings interrupting my line of sight, and that's going to be a very large change. And I know that the stats, according to the experts here, say that that's the best location, but I wonder again, where was community input on that prime location? Because what I've heard was the consultants came up with 5 concepts, all of which were in City Park. Then staff narrowed it to 3. Then it comes to the public, and now our choices are, do you want it in City Park? Or maybe you'd prefer City Park? Or how about City Park? And I'm not sure that that's the place there I want it. And I don't think I'm going to support a vote if it's put to the public vote, if it's going to be in City Park, even though I think our community needs an indoor pool. So I hope that some more public engagement in terms of location occurs. And I am going to kind of paraphrase what was said at one of the recent Parks and Rec Board meetings by one of the board members that said, what has to be considered is what the public will accept and what the public will support. And I hope that that will be something that is very strongly considered if this moves forward. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Karen Graves. I live at 435 Edgerton. This is the second time I have addressed the City Commission about this issue, and I'm excited to address you again. I will make it brief. I have been a family physician in this town for 20 years, and I'm very proud to do that. I do find, though, that we are lacking a lot of things in this town. I moved here, and I found a lot of things were very outdated. Medicine, our Parks and Rec situation, there's just a lot of stuff that our town could really use, and we need to look forward. We need to be forward thinking. We need to make this work. This is the second time I've come here. I think I came back two years ago, and we were still talking in the same place about this same plan. This pool needs to move forward. It needs to be done. I think the great big plan is awesome. I've actually had the pleasure to talk with Aaron over here, and he has a great plan for this. He listened to everything I had to say. He even gave me some good counterpoints, because I'm a huge proponent of swimming in this town. I have been the president of the Manhattan Marlins for over 5 years. My child just was on the state swim team, and I do believe that this town needs this indoor pool more than anything for fitness, wellness, safety is a huge one. Kids need to know how to swim. We have nowhere to teach them, especially for the underprivileged. This needs to happen. It didn't even happen before. We had swim lessons at the natatorium. You had to pay a lot of money for those. This town needs to get behind its underserved people. We have the people in place, and get this moving. This needs to be on the vote this fall to get this. Put it to the people. You'll see that they want it. They need this pool. So please, please, would you please consider this? I've addressed at least 2 of you before about this. So thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to everybody tonight.
Okay, thank you. So, in the interest of time, we're going to close public comment. Is there one more? We got a time limit on the meeting.
Blade Mages, 2000 hunting. Like the young gentleman, I too wear my swimsuit, my Speedos underneath. I was encouraged to not. So you get this version of me. So the only things I want to add, I'd echo everything. There's been a lot of great points made. Blade Mages, 2000 hunting. I wrote it, but I didn't say it, sorry. The only thing I would add to this is when we look at holistically some of the challenges that the university, the city, the chamber, regionally that we're facing. One of the reasons we're trying to figure out what our financial recapture rates are is because we can't pay for anything. The reason we can't pay for anything is because we're flat. We're not growing. The community isn't growing. There aren't these major employers moving to town. So when the city considers the levers that it can push to help make this community attractive to employers, this whole conversation is about the community here that will use it, which I would be one of and a huge proponent of. But there are lots of people that are evaluating this community that don't live here. People that want to move businesses here, people that want to work remote and live where they went to K-State. Those people want to see these kinds of things. And so when we think about economically, how can we maybe, how do we grow the pie? It's projects like this. It's things that will ultimately help Manhattan attract new business, attract new residents, new employees that ultimately grow the tax base. And so one voice that wasn't really represented here tonight is that of kind of the business community and the types of assets or the types of efforts that we need to see the city get behind, because those are the ways that the city can help. The city can't go, recruit the next big business to move to town, but the things you can push on, the roads and bridges, the parks, public safety, equity, accessibility, those are all things you guys can push on, and this plan has been really exciting. So I just wanted to make sure that voice was heard tonight, and you guys consider that moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll close public comment and get some final comments from the commission. So Aaron's got the guidance he needs.
Well, I already told Aaron, I think you proved it with the stats for the location. I like what you're having in Northview. Again, I just have to get that holistic thing and see, we said 3 pools was too many for where we're at. How do we get it, make it economical?
I did think of, I have one more question that I wrote down. 50-meter pool versus a 25-meter pool. Just real quick, competition-wise, what's the benefit of having the 50-meter pool?
Well, under the consolidation effort, it would allow us to also do a summer course. The summer course is a 50-meter course. The indoor course through the winter is the 25-yard.
Okay. So I heard a lot about, so let's focus on just building the competition pool first. And I hear that. I think that it's a good idea and a good philosophy. I do wonder, and one concern that I would have is, are we saving time and money in the short term that we would then have to reinvest again in the long term to build that bigger facility should we need it? So that's kind of something that I would like to look at and just make sure that we're exploring. But yeah, we've heard a lot of great support. And again, thank you very much for taking your time to come out. Thank you to everybody who has emailed and will continue to email. This is something that will require a lot of community input. And I really would like to see more of that.
Yeah, go ahead and plan your little hearts out. I support indoor pools, but I think we really need a lot of number crunching. And I've heard wonderful things about what you did in Garden City, but, you know, Garden City's not Manhattan, and many of us can use the university facilities for free. And so I think we really need to look at, you know, how much of the community is going to need that. And also, I'm hearing from the people who live around the park that they're very unhappy with the whole idea. So we'll have to see how we can sell that to them, if that's the only option that we have.
I concur with Peter. I think, in theory, a phased approach would be nice. I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer. I don't see how a building of that size could be constructed in phases. And given the projections of increased costs over time, I think that also would have an impact on a phased project like that. So I agree. I think if we've been talking about this for 15 years, it's perhaps time to, I won't say the phrase that came to my mind about how we should move, but I think it is time to move forward. So, thank you.
Okay, and I also agree with Peter. We should have a phased approach, but I guess I was looking at it more from a standpoint of, you know, what do you do first in this plan, a priority list? And is it going to be to fix the smaller parks, as Karen suggested, or is the aquatics number one? And then do you build it first and then maybe close another pool? That kind of a priority list. And then, you know, I'm for the aquatics thing. Again, I think the location, we may want to, you know, not really firm up the location until we decide, okay, we're going to build an aquatic center, because clearly, you know, the pools are only open 13 weeks out of the year, and that just doesn't seem like we're getting a good return on that. So that's one of the reasons I like the idea of an indoor pool. And then third, we've heard a lot about competition, and I know my daughter was on the diving team years ago when they used the, you know, the KSU auditorium, and that's all fallen by the wayside. But that's why, as Susan pointed out, we need to get USD 383 to step up here. Because, you know, the city already, I love the way we combined our rec centers with the middle schools, because it got a good bang for the buck on both sides. But we really need them to step up, because the city doesn't really need to be funding, you know, 383 swimming. And if it's that important to the citizens, you know, tell the school board. Now, that's part of your mill levy too. It's not just what the city throws out there. So if they could, you know, kick in some financial support on this, I think that would be important. And I don't know, you know, if we've got the ability to bring that together. And then lastly, of course, the priority list and what we do is all going to depend on funding. And that may mean putting something on the ballot that was just mentioned here before, and that would be a sales tax thing, not a mill levy thing. And, you know, was tried before and failed. So it's going to be one of those things where these details are going to make it very difficult to write a ballot question and say, okay, here's where the focus is. But that's where I'm at. You know, like I said, I think it's a good business plan, and drive on with it. So does that give you enough, Aaron, for?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
And when you
Okay.
have that plan done, can you print it out for me? That's a lot to read on a computer.
That has been a common request.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. Then we'll move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is the city manager briefing. I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I just want to highlight the portal that you all have access to gives you a lot of information. There's a couple things that we need to talk about tonight. We'll get to that in a second, but if there are things within the portal, whether that's about the next couple meetings, work sessions, any type of information you're getting there that you want to talk about here, I'd really like you to bring that up in this venue. I'm not going to sift back through all that information. If there's something there that you would like to talk about, I'll wait and react to you all in terms of those topics and those subjects. One thing that I would like to clarify tonight, we sent you out some information on future meetings. July has 5 Tuesdays. The 2nd and the 9th surround our Independence Day. We suggested taking the 9th off, but meeting the 2nd and the 16th from a legislative perspective. Then the following 2 Tuesdays, which would be the 23rd and 30th, we'd have work sessions. Does that fit your schedules? Yes?
It works for me.
We're good there? Great. And then we also asked for any vacations and times this summer, so we can get those on the schedule. May 14th, I've got John and Peter out. We did not plan to meet that night. We don't have anything on the agenda, so the 14th you'll have off that evening, and that's on the schedule as well if you hop into the portal. Other than that, I believe that is all I had for you this evening. Mayor, do you want to lead your item, or would you like Katie to brief the commissioners on her memo?
I don't know if you got a chance to read it. She put a copy down there, and I've talked about it 2 or 3 times. So, you know, and Katie did the research on this, because I wanted to be sure that, you know, all the Ts and Is were dotted and correct before we went forward. And if we don't have concurrence to do this, then we won't go any farther forward on it. But take it from there, Katie.
Thanks, Mayor. I will summarize the memo. The question that I answered was whether or not the special alcohol funds could be used to fund the RCPD's mental health caseworker position. There was a position description provided. We get a portion of the state's alcoholic liquor sales tax. It's called the special alcohol funds. The statute dictates how that money can be used, but the city commission gets to decide how it's distributed consistent with those uses. You have a city code section that establishes the Community Support Funds Advisory Board, the CSFAB, and it says they shall make the recommendations on how this money is awarded. I think you're all familiar with the process. They'll open applications July 8th of this year. Then they have a public review process. They make recommendations to the commission. The commission can modify those recommendations. The commission approves the final awards of special alcohol funds for the next calendar year by approving agreements with the recipients of those funds. So the commission has the ability to go ahead and decide to award a portion of those funds to the RCPD for this position. To do that, a majority would have to agree to go ahead and do that award outside of the CSFAB process, which you have the ability to do under the ordinance. And then we'd have to take the form agreement to the law board and have the law board approve that agreement. That's easy. The form itself is easy to adapt. I don't know what the law board will do, but the form is very quick to adapt. One question I had was whether or not we could guarantee that if we supported the RCPD position, if it would offset the mill levy in the way that the RCPD would lower its budget submission to the city for levy for equal to that amount. We can't contractually require that. We can't guarantee that in any way, but of course the law board could do that or not do that in response to that award. I don't think there's any reason to tie this action to any future awards that the CSFAB is going to consider. We don't have those applications yet. We don't know who's going to make requests. We don't know how much they're going to ask, and we don't have an estimate of next year's special alcohol funds. So this is really something that's more that you just go ahead and do the award to the RCPD if you chose to do so, and then when city staff gets the amount of the special alcohol funds estimated for 2025, they'll just reduce it by the amount that you award to RCPD, and then that board can go ahead and distribute whatever remains. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Katie, can you give us an idea of approximately what the city has received from the alcohol funds over the last several years?
I'll have to turn that over to Jared.
Typically, for the portion that's associated to CSFAB and the Special Alcohol Fund, last year we were around $515,000 that we made available to those social service agencies. We'd anticipate if there's an inflation, that might go up. But yeah, for this application period that Katie was referring to that's going to open in July, we're going to talk with you about that fund and what we're going to make available at your last budget work session in June. But I'd estimate it's going to be around that $500,000. The fund does have a cash balance that's pretty healthy. It's up to about $200,000. And that's just because during COVID we were unsure how much money we were going to receive. So we didn't give as much in those years because those receipts were coming in less. Yeah, that's about the status of the fund.
So essentially, it's possible to fund this and not reduce, they'll still get $500,000.
That's possible, but the cash balance is one-time money. So if you're expecting to, say you dip into that cash balance, say you give away $100,000 from that $200,000 cash balance, in future years that money isn't necessarily going to be there, and it would eat into the funds that you typically are handing out to other applicants.
Yeah, and this memo doesn't include the amount. I think I had the HR at RCPD figure out what it all was to include capers. It came out to about $84,000 to fund the position. And if you read the, and I had them send us the job description, whatever. I just think it's a great priority use, and it focuses right on there. And then the beauty to me is if we do this, there's no guarantee we'll do it next year. We could fund it this year and then get some metrics and see, because we'll be able to know if it works after a year, because for sure they've got a captive audience and they know where they go afterwards. So, I like it. And then, Katie's point, yeah, the law board could, not, offset the mill levy on it. I personally don't believe that's going to happen. And there's two of us that are on there, and we've had a initial budget session, and probably.
Yeah, I just say if we want to do it, we got to do our budget before the city does its budget, so. We need to get the information.
And that's why I put this out here as early as I did, because we can't wait and have RCPD ask for money for it. We've got to do it up front.
It would only be like a tenth of a mil. I mean, I just want to make sure that those social services who really use those dollars for staff, which is very hard to write grants for, are well taken care of. If there is carryover, then that would, we could do a pilot program and that would make sense. But I don't want to take money away from those groups that really depend on it significantly.
Well, I mentioned that in there. I know that, the board's been giving the USD, about $250,000 every year to fund counselors at the high school. And I don't see any metrics on how successful they are. Everybody assumes they are. But I personally thought this would be a little bit more successful. But with the carryover, as Jared mentioned there, we can do it for 1 year. It's not going to do any harm, and see what the payback is, and then see what the proceeds are that come in. But I think if we don't support RCPD on this, that when it comes down to the budget reductions, they've already eliminated one of the co-responders, mainly because they couldn't hire anybody to do the job anyway, but they cut it. We had 2, now we're down to 1. And I think, if they have to chop something else out, the law board says, reduce your budget, they'll probably throw this under the bus before they do anything else. And I really think this is an outstanding initiative, and we've had so much trouble in the jail, the past few years. You're familiar with that one. You're on the county commission.
Sure, and I said a pilot program would be.
But if you're for that, and so what I'm trying to get is consensus, if at least 3 of us agree to proceed, then we can have the staff do what's necessary. But if we got 3 that object, then we'll just drop the idea.
I think if we were going to fund it for a year out of the cash balance, I would be more supportive of it. Because like Karen said, we're able to spread that money across a lot of organizations. And I'd be concerned about spending a big chunk of that money on one position that can really, I agree that it's important, right? Prevention is more effective, right? But it's only one person, and they can only do so much, where we're spreading this money out to a lot of different organizations that have different demographics that they work with. And I think that we can make kind of more of a broader impact across the community that way. So, you know, like you said, if we can fund it out of that cash reserve and we can have some metrics next year to say, hey, this really worked. We were able to get this many people, prevent them from being arrested, you know, reduce recidivism, whatever we can measure, then we can look at it, at actually making this more of a regular thing. But especially, you know, right before the applications, I'm sure there's a lot of these organizations are already starting to put their applications together so that they can have them in July 8th. I think it's kind of last minute to do that this year and say, you know, we're only going to fund this much because we're going to take this away from you, or from the fund. I think it's a little late for that.
I brought it up last year, and everybody was worried we were gonna, you know, cut their money, you know, out somewhere else. But that's why I think if we go with Karen's idea, call it a pilot, use that reserve fund, it won't cut into anybody else's money, and see what happens. Try it for a year.
I know it's not our position to edit or comment on the job description, but I was a little bit surprised that this person is going to be responsible for as few as counseling 8 inmates, when we've been talking several times about the overpopulation at the jail right now. That seems small.
I figure that may change. I mean, I don't know what the population will be at that time.
It could be 8 at a time, too.
Yeah, that's the way I read it.
No?
I'd say
It says a
caseload of 8 to 10
caseload of
inmates.
8 to 10 inmates.
And again, yeah, I mean, one person can only do so much work.
This is true, but, you know, are we, and, you know, group counseling sessions, but
They'll be focused on some folks that really need the help. That's the thing that's interesting, where the general counseling that goes on, I just don't think it'll be as effective.
Yeah.
But-
And now, okay, so I know you had talked about the co-responders, funding the co-responders through this, and this is for a mental health case manager, so.
Yeah, this is different. I gave up on the co-responder thing because they cut one of them, and this is actually less money
Yeah.
than the co-responder. It's only 84. The co-responder was 120.
Well,
So-
more
so-
dangerous job,
so-
too.
So I figured this had a better chance of going
Yeah.
through, because it doesn't cut into the funds of some of those other agencies that are used to getting their share every year.
Yeah, and that, you know, I like the co-responders because, you know, a lot of these people that are getting arrested really don't need to be arrested. They're in a mental health crisis. They need help. And we can prevent some of that with the
And
co-responders.
that's why we did that, because of people that are trying to commit suicide, that's what the co-responders are for, helping out with a lot of things. And we've been successful with that over the years.
It has been very hard to find people.
I'm
to
sure,
fill the position, though.
because you have to have
You
a,
have to get up at 3 in the morning.
well, and you have to have the training to not only be a therapist, but also be willing to go out at 3 o'clock in the morning to a domestic event.
Okay, so can we get a quick, just up or down?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we've got consensus, at least for a pilot program, 1 year. No guarantee we'll do it next year, but we'll try it this time.
So I have a question, though, procedural. Are we allowed, can we make that decision at a
We're
work
gonna
session?
have to have a legislative session.
Okay.
Right,
This
so we need to
was
get
just-
that so we know on the law board, we
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
get that
this was just
done.
coordination. I didn't want to go through doing the paperwork for a formal vote if, you know, a majority of us said no, just to waste everybody's time.
Sure.
So, yeah, this is no formal action. It's not approved till we come back and vote.
Yeah, the item has to go to the law board before you all will consider
Yes.
it, per Katie's process she outlined
Yeah.
here.
Well, do that again.
Yeah.
Vote on it twice.
Yeah,
I think
and
most things have to happen in the month of May for you all to get this
Correct.
done, so.
Correct. And the law board knows about it. I've mentioned it to them before, but,
Yeah.
you know, we just had to get the procedure in place, and Katie's taking care of that for us, so I appreciate that.
The only additional item I had, there was a question about some notes and some presentations and some information that a commissioner was willing and offered to share with all of you. My reaction to that individual was, you can bring things up. If commissioners want them and you want to use us to disperse materials, that's great. Our concern was somebody goes to an event, takes notes, could be on a very technical topic. And it kind of came back to, do you want staff to review those notes? Or do you, so it was more of a just, what are you interested in as a commission? If another commissioner goes to a training, goes to a conference, we've had presentations come back and we've dispersed them, but personal notes, I think, are a little bit different in terms of the interpretation sometimes and even accuracy. That was part of our concern. We hadn't done that a whole lot. Presentations, again, we've dispersed, but are you interested in someone else's personal notes after an attendance to an event? My request, my suggestion was bring it up here, and if people want them, you can send them to those individuals yourself, or if a majority want it, you can route it through our office. But just looking for some feedback and direction for other commissioners.
I think like handwritten notes might be, like you said, a little bit, those are kind of, you have your own style of taking notes. Now, if it were more of like a summary type of thing, and then presentation also, I think would be good.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's the Washington D.C. your trip to D.C.
And
and
meeting that
yeah,
the leadership conference.
Yeah,
I'm the one who did.
and I'm sure you take great notes. But yeah, I don't know that I would want to share my notes out just because they're kind of random. But I mean, information's information. Putting it out there, I don't think is harmful or in any way or anything like that.
I kind of think it's okay to share your information. In fact, I've been feeling rather remiss that I haven't reported on the regional planning organization very much, and I need to do that. Just when not that you should put your opinion in there, but the facts. This is what that Westmoreland just blew away, but no, not them, but Ogden got $1.8 million for their Main Street program because of the grant. That kind of thing. I don't see anything wrong with me telling you all that.
Yeah, I think the one thing I can see you're concerned that if it goes to staff and staff sends it out, it's almost like an endorsement or something. Now, one of us can send something to everybody as long as people don't reply to it or, don't do it.
Yeah,
Don't go back and forth with it.
Historically, the commission has shared their meeting experiences, their conference
Because
experiences.
you're sending people to things and we're paying for it. They
Absolutely.
should come back and tell you what they learned.
And that's not what I'm trying to address here. It's somebody's interpretation of a presentation in detailed notes, and whether or not we should review those for accuracy. Do you even want those notes? I think that's just the question. Typically, you all share your experiences. I've even seen commissioners share their experience and other commissioners ask, hey, can you send me that? Because I would really like to have it. I'm not talking about that. This is really more about just personal notes that are being taken. I just had a concern for a technical accuracy and distribution to you all, and I'm just trying to get a feel from you all. When you report on those things and you ask for those things, that's great. But historically, I don't recall us actually getting notes and distributing them to the commission that were done on a private nature.
Yeah, I think the review would probably be on whoever was taking the notes, and like, it would have to be between the person who was taking the notes and the staff, whether or not it gets reviewed. But I do think it was just trying to go through you to avoid a coma violation.
Yeah, and again, I'm not.
We learned about that.
You all can share information with each other in this forum as much as you want, and you can send things to us that you've received from a presentation standpoint. There are just too many technical questions, and if you sat through John Goodyear's presentation on budget, there's 117 slides, and there's a lot of information there, and it's very technical. I can't guarantee the notes you're going to take are accurate. And then I get back into a question of legal of, should we review these? And should we correct them? Should we expand on them? And then we're into a whole new ballgame of information being shared, so.
So I guess from a staff perspective, what is the best way for us and you know, the written materials, I mean, obviously we can discuss things and things like that. What is the best way for us to share those materials amongst ourselves?
A presentation you go receive at a conference, you want to bring that presentation back, you mentioned it in a public forum, you went to the conference, you received a presentation, I'll get that to the clerk's office, we'll get that out to you, no problem. We've done that many times.
Yes, you know, what I've done on occasion, like, if there's one item that I want to relay to the commission, I've written a memo and just said, please share it in the mail folder with the other commissioners, and I haven't really asked the staff to edit it. It's just share it because I'm gonna bring it up at the coordination meeting.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I've done that on occasion, but generally, I don't share notes or write memos on anything that I go to. It's just, but you know, like Karen says, if something really important, you know, came up there that we need to be highlighted, that I think is the easy way to do it. You just, you know, write a memo, I went to this, and here's 2 things you all need to know. You know, that these guys got $2.5 million.
1.8.
Whatever it was, you know, and so, you know, I'm all for that, or if something really, new came out of some meeting that's gonna affect our budget or something that we all need to be aware of.
Yeah.
Then I would, you know, just quickly write a memo, but just, you know, personally, generally, I'm not really interested in hearing everything that took place there because, you know, some of it's gonna be redundant, it may be new to you, but, you know, John and I might have seen it, Karen surely has.
You've been there
You've
longer
been
than
at
I
this
have.
long enough, so that's why, you know, it's a little bit different.
Sure.
But we also don't wanna put extra work on the staff, so.
The Coma Cora topic, we've had multiple trainings in this room. There are a lot of ways to talk about those issues. There's a lot of ways to present them. Again, once they're referenced on a piece of paper and there's explanations, it gets into, those are your personal interpretations. We have a very formal process to give you that information.
Sure.
So you know, you're avoiding violations. That's what entered my mind when I'm starting to read some of this stuff. It gets technical. So
Yeah.
again, please share your experiences, share your presentations and items that you're receiving at conferences or trainings. We will share those, no problem. It's somebody taking notes, interpreting a presentation that, again, I would just caution us from sharing with each other.
Okay, you have anything else?
I do not. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Yeah. John?
I've got those reports that you sent out, with a lot of the first quarter budget results and all of that. And I brought up when we were getting the public works and the streets things and kept saying budget cut, and we went through that. And again, this is throwing out the commission because I'm kind of proposed something I'd like to see us do, is really to review like these quarterly numbers, besides just getting the reports, but actually in one of the work sessions each quarter, review those results so we can ask questions. So when we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, we can, you know, follow up what that really means and how deep it is. And it's also because these budgets are done as a big blob, where I'm used to in the private sector having monthly, quarterly budgets. So if something happens more in the first quarter, you budget it that way. Where now it's a percentage, you're not, yeah, you can look at last year, but it's hard to tell. And I think it'll help us going into the budget session. It also will help us when we get questions. I mean, I was at the zoo trust meeting on Monday, and one of the people came up and talked about how the city's been way over budget, so they had to cut the zoo budget, and we have the Pence sculptors coming up, and there wasn't enough money for mulch, so could everyone donate so much money at the meeting so we could have enough for the nice dedication coming up this weekend. So of course, me being there, commissioners, I got the hisses, boos, everything else. What's going on, John? And I'm like, And, you know, maybe if we had some of those quarterly updates, I'd know that, you know, we're taking some money away from the zoo or whatever. I mean,
I thought we did get more, the thing, it would say, road and bridge budget or whatever. What we spent this year, what we're gonna spend and what the budget was and what percentage of the budget we spent.
We've got some of these, but I was saying just to,
Are we getting those? I mean, am I not seeing them?
well, we just got one.
Oh, okay.
But I was saying to actually formalize it once a quarter at a meeting, we review it so we can ask questions.
Oh, okay.
And go through it. The other thing is, could we get this information for the 23 budget versus the 23 actual? Because that way too, we can see where did we skimp in the last year? Are we continuing to skimp in that area? And then when we're going to do the next year budget, now we're 2 years into it, and it can give us that insight, because we never really do that look back, because we plan budget to budget, but we never go back to look at how did we do in that year, budget to
Yeah,
actual.
the budget to actual, that's something you should see. I mean,
Yeah, so if
yeah.
we could get that, that gives us our starting point for this year, and then we could do those quarterly reviews. So is that,
I would support
I don't have a
that.
problem with that, John.
Is that realistic, Raina, you're here, is that realistic to get for us?
Good evening, Commissioners. The information that we provide on a monthly basis and that you all are referencing, that is in summary form. It depends on how you would want that information. You know, Commissioner Mata mentioned the 2023 to budget and actuals. We do provide that in a similar format. It's just not presented to you all for you all to be able to ask the questions, but we can provide that in just about any type of format you want. It just, summary is probably the easiest to digest because of all the departments and the line items and things like that. And so you should have received the first quarter of 2024, but then there's also the 2023 as of what we ended and just closed the books out as. Trying to put that into a digestible format, we'll work on that so you all can see that, but
yeah,
our
I think
financial-
similar to what you have for the quarter, we could
Yeah.
work on, you might get that more in-depth question at that.
Yeah.
And then it could be an evolving thing, you know, we
Yeah.
may have a meeting and come back, well, we want this one broken out a little more or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to having more regular overviews of that.
Happy to schedule.
Okay.
We'll get them on the agenda.
Peter?
We have 3 minutes left, or we'll need to extend.
Yeah, we got 3 minutes left. No, nothing?
Good.
Okay, then we need to take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
City staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt,
Aye.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Adamchak.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so the April 30th, 2024 City Commission work session is hereby adjourned.